One bullet, 1 second, one choice that would shatter everything she thought she knew about survival. On a rain-soaked Manhattan night, waitress Lena Hayes made a split-second decision that saved a dangerous man's life and destroyed her own. What began with a red laser dot aimed at a stranger's chest spiraled into a deadly world of power, betrayal, and impossible choices. She thought she was invisible. She thought she was safe. She was wrong. This is her story, a story of how one moment of instinct can rewrite your entire destiny. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The rain hammered against the tall windows of Luminaire, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, each drop a small percussion against glass that overlooked the glittering chaos of the city below. Inside, warmth and golden light wrapped around tables where the wealthy gathered, their laughter soft and practiced, their movements elegant and unhurried. Crystal glasses clinked, silverware whispered against fine china. The air smelled of truffle oil and aged wine, of money so old it had stopped counting itself. Lena Hayes moved through it all like a ghost. Her black uniform was crisp despite the 12-hour shift weighing on her shoulders. Her dark hair, pulled back tight, revealed a face that had learned to show nothing. No exhaustion, no frustration, no anger at the casual cruelty of people who tipped in percentages that matched their interest in her existence. She'd been doing this for 3 years. 3 years of invisible labor, of smiling at men who looked through her, of balancing plates and swallowing pride. Her feet ached. Her back screamed. But she kept moving, kept serving, kept surviving. Table 7 needs water, Marcus, the floor manager, hissed as she passed the kitchen doors. He was young, ambitious, and believed that managing a restaurant made him important. And smile more, Lena. You look like you're at a funeral. She didn't respond. She never did. Arguments cost energy she didn't have. Lena grabbed the crystal pitcher from the service station and made her way toward table 7, weaving between occupied tables with practiced efficiency. She'd learned to read the room instinctively, which tables were celebrating, which were negotiating, which were pretending their marriages weren't collapsing over dessert. It was a survival skill, this reading of people. In a place like Luminaire, you learned fast, or you didn't last. Table 7 was near the floor-to-ceiling windows, the best view in the house. Rain streaked down the glass in silver rivulets, distorting the city lights beyond into abstract art. The table had been reserved under a simple name, Volkov. No first name, no company affiliation, just Volkov. That alone had made Marcus nervous all evening. As Lena approached, she felt it immediately, that subtle shift in atmosphere that separated these men from the usual clientele. 4 men sat at the table. They wore expensive suits, perfectly tailored, the kind that whispered wealth rather than shouted it. But it wasn't the clothes that set them apart. It was the way they occupied space, controlled, compact, every movement deliberate and minimal, like predators conserving energy between hunts. Their conversation was quiet, nearly inaudible beneath the restaurant's ambient noise, and their eyes constantly tracked the room. All except one. The man at the head of the table sat with his back to the window. A tactical mistake, Lena thought randomly, though she couldn't have said why. He was younger than the others, perhaps mid-30s, with dark hair and features that spoke of Eastern European ancestry. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly fitted, and he wore it with the unconscious ease of someone who'd never questioned whether he belonged anywhere. But it was his eyes that caught her. Gray and cold as winter steel, yet somehow not empty. They were calculating eyes, intelligent eyes, eyes that assessed and decided and moved on before you realized you'd been measured. Adrian Volkov. Though she didn't know his name yet, Lena knew instantly he was the one in charge. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice pleasant and professionally neutral as she approached. "May I refill your water?" None of them acknowledged her immediately. The man to Adrian's right, older, with silver threading through his dark hair, continued speaking in what sounded like Russian, though Lena couldn't be sure. The language was low and urgent. Adrian raised one hand slightly, a minimal gesture that commanded instant silence. "Please," he said to Lena, his English crisp and unaccented. "Thank you." As she moved around the table, filling glasses with practiced efficiency, Lena's instincts began whispering. Something was wrong here. Not wrong in the way of the usual Luminaire drama. Angry spouses, failed business deals, secret affairs. This was different, sharper, more dangerous. The man across from Adrian, younger, with nervous eyes and hands that wouldn't stay still, was terrified. She could see it in the way his fingers drummed against the tablecloth, in the sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the restaurant's perfect climate control, in the way his eyes kept darting toward the exit. The others weren't nervous. They were watching him, monitoring him. This wasn't a business dinner. This was something else entirely. "Will you be ordering soon?" Lena asked, her tone unchanged even as every nerve in her body sparked with warning. "Chef has prepared a special—" "We'll need a few more minutes," Adrian interrupted smoothly. His eyes met hers for just a moment, and Lena felt the full weight of his attention like a physical thing. Those gray eyes took her in completely. Not sexually, not dismissively, but with the same calculating assessment he'd probably given everything else in his life. Measuring, deciding, filing away. Then he looked past her, and she became invisible again. Lena nodded and stepped back, but something made her pause at the service station nearby. She busied herself arranging napkins that didn't need arranging, adjusting silverware that was already perfect, all while keeping the table in her peripheral vision. The nervous man was talking now, his voice too loud for the table's previous discretion. "I don't have it. I told Mikhail I need more time." "Time," Adrian said quietly, "is what you've already had. 6 months of it." The shipment got delayed. There were complications at the port, complications you failed to communicate. Adrian's voice remained perfectly level, which somehow made it more frightening than if he'd shouted. "Complications that cost my organization $3 million and a partnership with people who don't accept excuses." "I can fix this," the nervous man insisted, and now Lena could hear the desperation bleeding through. "I have contacts, I can—" "Alexei," the silver-haired man spoke for the first time, his voice carrying a warning. But Alexei, the terrified one, wouldn't stop. "You don't understand, Volkov. These people, they'll kill me if I don't—" "Yes," Adrian agreed simply. "They will." The simplicity of it, the casual acknowledgement of death delivered in the same tone someone might use to discuss the weather, made Lena's blood run cold. She should walk away. She should go back to the kitchen, mind her own business, stay invisible, like she'd learned to do. This wasn't her world. These weren't her problems, but her feet wouldn't move. Through the window behind the men, Manhattan glittered in the rain-soaked darkness. Somewhere out there, beyond the expensive glass and exclusive atmosphere, was Lena's real life. Her studio apartment in Queens with the broken heater, her student loan debt that grew faster than her paycheck, her mother's medical bills that never stopped coming. This was just a job. These people were just customers. "Walk away," the sensible part of her brain insisted. "You've seen nothing. You know nothing." Then she saw it. A red dot, small and precise, dancing across the rain-streaked window. It appeared for just a moment, a tiny point of crimson light that her peripheral vision caught purely by chance. It moved across the glass, tracking, searching, and then settled, perfectly still, perfectly centered, on the back of Adrian Volkov's charcoal gray suit jacket. Lena's breath stopped. She'd grown up in Detroit, in neighborhoods where gunshots were as common as car alarms. Her brother Marcus, the real Marcus, not her pretentious boss, had done 2 tours in Afghanistan before coming home in a box. She'd listened to him talk about laser sights during his last leave, about the red dots that preceded death in the desert, about the strange calm that came when you knew someone had you in their crosshairs. She knew what that red dot meant. Later, when people asked her why she did it, authorities, lawyers, Adrian himself, Lena would struggle to explain. It wasn't heroism. She wasn't brave. She was exhausted and broke and drowning in a life that gave her nothing but sore feet and empty pockets. She had no reason to care whether some dangerous stranger lived or died. But in that moment, watching that red dot settle over a human being's heart, something in her simply refused to let it happen. Not on her watch, not while she stood there able to do something. Instinct took over. Lena lunged forward, the crystal water pitcher still in her hand. Her body moved before her mind finished processing, pure survival reflex overriding common sense. She had maybe 1 second, maybe less, and she used it. "Sir, I'm so sorry." She collided with Adrian's chair deliberately, violently, sending water arcing through the air in a crystalline spray. The pitcher shattered against the table's edge as she fell forward, arms extending, and her full weight crashed into Adrian Volkov's shoulders, driving him sideways and down. The restaurant erupted in gasps and shouts as the city's most powerful broker went sprawling across the floor. A waitress on top of him, water everywhere, crystal shards glittering like scattered diamonds. And through it all, simultaneous with the crash, came another sound, sharp and decisive and unmistakable. The window behind Adrian's now empty chair exploded inward. Safety glass designed to fracture rather than shatter turned the entire panel into a spiderweb of cracks centered around a single hole. The bullet, because that's what it was, though most of the diners wouldn't realize it for several more seconds, buried itself in the wall 15 feet away with a solid thunk that was lost in the chaos. For one frozen moment, everything stopped. Lena lay across Adrian's chest on the restaurant floor, water soaking through her uniform, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. Beneath her, she could feel Adrian's body, hard with muscle beneath the expensive suit, absolutely still. His face was inches from hers, those gray eyes wide with a shock that probably mirrored her own. Then the screaming started. It began with one woman at a nearby table who'd seen the window shatter. Her shriek cut through the restaurant's ambient noise like a knife. And suddenly everyone was moving. Chairs scraped back, glasses fell. People shouted, confused and frightened, unsure whether to run or hide or stay frozen. "Everybody down!" The silver-haired man, not shocked, not confused, pure trained response, had a gun in his hand before Lena's next heartbeat. When had he drawn it? Where had it come from? "Stay down!" The fourth man at the table, younger and dark-eyed, was already moving toward the shattered window, his own weapon appearing with the same impossible speed. He spoke rapidly into a phone that had materialized from nowhere, his words quick and commanding. But Adrian hadn't moved. He lay perfectly still beneath Lena, his eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her forget the chaos erupting around them. "You saw it," he said quietly. Not a question, a statement of fact delivered with absolute certainty. Lena couldn't speak. Her throat had closed around words that wouldn't come. She nodded instead, a tiny movement. Something flickered across Adrian's face. Surprise, perhaps, or calculation, or something else she couldn't name. His hand came up, and for one irrational moment Lena thought he might hurt her, might blame her for this somehow. Instead, his fingers wrapped around her wrist, gentle but absolutely firm. "Don't move," he said. "Not yet." "What?" Lena's voice came out as a croak. She swallowed, tried again. "What's happening? You just saved my life." Adrian's voice remained calm, conversational even, as if they were discussing the weather rather than lying on a floor surrounded by broken glass while people screamed. "And in doing so, you've made yourself a problem." "A problem?" The absurdity of it broke through Lena's shock. She'd just thrown herself at a stranger, probably ruined his $1,000 suit, definitely gotten herself fired, and he was calling her a problem? "I'm sorry, what?" But Adrian wasn't listening. His attention had shifted to the silver-haired man, who'd crossed to them with quick, efficient steps. "Report." Shooter was across the street, northeast position, likely the Winston building roof. "Yuri's team is moving to intercept, but they're already gone, sir." This was professional. Obviously. Adrian sat up, bringing Lena with him with that same gentle but implacable grip on her wrist. Water dripped from his hair, his suit, but he paid it no attention. Security failure. Unknown, checking all channels now. The silver-haired man's eyes flicked to Lena, assessment sharp as broken glass. "What about her?" "What about her, Dmitri?" "She's a witness. She saved me." Adrian stood in one smooth motion, pulling Lena up with him. Her legs wobbled but held. Around them, restaurant security had finally arrived, along with what looked like local police, everyone shouting questions that got lost in the general chaos. "Which means she's now our responsibility. Adrian, we can. We will." Adrian's tone allowed no argument. He looked at Lena, really looked at her, and she felt that assessing gaze again, more thorough this time, taking in her cheap uniform, her exhausted face, her terrified eyes. "What's your name?" "Lena." Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, distant and thin. "Lena Hayes." "Lena Hayes." Adrian repeated it like he was memorizing it, filing it away in whatever mental catalog he kept. Do you understand what just happened here? Someone tried to kill you. The words came out flat, factual. Shock was giving way to something else now, something that felt like hysteria bubbling up from her chest. And I just threw water on you. I assaulted a customer. Oh God, I'm fired. I'm definitely fired. A sound escaped Adrian that might have been a laugh in different circumstances. You're not fired. You don't know my boss. I know that in approximately 30 seconds, this restaurant will be swarming with detectives who will want to know what you saw. Adrian's hand was still on her wrist, and now he pulled her closer, lowering his voice. They'll ask questions. Many questions. About me, about my associates, about what you heard at our table. And depending on how you answer those questions, you could become a very inconvenient loose end. The implication sank in slowly, like ice water through fabric. Lena stared at him. Are you threatening me? No. Adrian's voice was absolutely certain. I'm warning you. Someone just tried to kill me in a very public, very bold way. That means they're desperate or confident or both. It also means they'll be looking for any advantage, any leverage they can find. And a witness who saved my life, that's definitely leverage. I don't know anything. I'm just a waitress. You have eyes. Dmitri had moved closer, his expression grim. You saw the dot before the shot. That's not normal civilian observation. That's training, or at minimum, experience. My brother was a soldier, Lena said automatically, defensively. He talked about red dots, about snipers. That's all. That's the only reason I knew what it was. Was, Adrian repeated, catching the past tense. Understanding flickered across his face. I'm sorry. The unexpected sympathy nearly broke her. Lena blinked hard against tears that had nothing to do with the current situation and everything to do with Marcus's flag-draped coffin and her mother's screams and 6 years of grief she'd never properly processed. I just want to go home, she whispered. I know. Adrian glanced at Dmitri, some unspoken communication passing between them. But that's not safe right now, not until we know who took that shot and why. Not until we know if they saw you save me. This is insane. I'm nobody. I don't matter to... You matter to me. The words cut through her protest with absolute finality. You saved my life, Lena Hayes. That creates a debt, and I always pay my debts. Police were pushing through the crowd now, uniforms and plainclothes detectives, everyone shouting questions. Marcus, her boss. Marcus, not her brother, was frantically pointing toward the shattered window and the water-soaked floor, his face red with stress and anger. When his eyes found Lena, the fury there was unmistakable. Miss! A detective had reached them, middle-aged and tired-looking, his badge clipped to his belt. I need you to come with me. We have questions about what happened here. She'll be happy to cooperate, Adrian said smoothly, before Lena could respond. But first, she needs medical attention. She was knocked down during the incident, possible concussion. I'm fine, Lena protested, but Adrian's hand tightened fractionally on her wrist. Dmitri, call Dr. Chen, have him meet us at the office. Sir, she's not going anywhere until we get a statement, the detective began. Of course. Adrian's smile was pleasant and utterly unyielding. My lawyer will coordinate with your department to schedule a formal interview at her convenience. Here's his card. Somehow, a business card had appeared in his free hand. In the meantime, Miss Hayes is understandably shaken and needs to be checked for injuries sustained when she fell. She didn't fall, Detective. Adrian's voice dropped several degrees, all pleasantness evaporating like steam. A gunshot was fired in a crowded restaurant. Miss Hayes acted instinctively to protect herself and others. She requires medical attention. Unless you're prepared to detain her as a suspect rather than treat her as a victim, I suggest you take my lawyer's information and conduct this interview properly, with appropriate care for her well-being. The detective's jaw worked, clearly wanting to argue but recognizing a losing battle. People like Adrian Volkov, people with power and money and lawyers on speed dial didn't get bullied by street-level cops. He took the card with obvious reluctance. 24 hours, he said. Then we need her statement. You'll have it. Before Lena could process what was happening, Adrian was guiding her through the chaos toward the restaurant's side exit. Dmitri materialized on her other side, the dark-eyed younger man clearing a path ahead of them with the same quiet efficiency. People moved aside automatically, whether in response to their bearing or some invisible signal. Lena couldn't tell. "Wait," she managed, finding her voice again. "My things, my coat, will be retrieved." Adrian didn't slow. "Right now we're leaving." "You can't just kidnap me." "I'm not kidnapping you." They'd reached the exit, a nondescript door that led to the service alley. Rain poured down beyond it, turning the narrow space between buildings into a river. "I'm protecting you. There's a difference." "I don't need protection. I need to go home. I need to explain to my boss. I need—" The words died as they stepped into the alley, and Lena saw what waited there. 3 black SUVs, engines running, windows tinted dark as midnight. Men in suits, more of them, at least 6, stood in the rain like it didn't exist, their eyes constantly scanning the surrounding area. When they saw Adrian, they moved with synchronized precision, 2 of them opening doors, the others forming a protective barrier around the group. "This is protection," Adrian said quietly. "Get in, Lena, please." She should have run, should have screamed, should have done anything except what she actually did, which was climb into the middle SUV's back seat like she did this every day. Adrian slid in beside her. Dmitri took the front passenger seat. Doors closed with solid, expensive thuds. The convoy started moving before Lena's seatbelt clicked into place. Through the rain-streaked window, she watched Luminaire recede. The police lights, the gathering crowd, Marcus shouting into his phone, the shattered window that marked where her normal life had ended. The restaurant disappeared around a corner, and with it, everything Lena had known. "Where are we going?" she asked, proud that her voice barely shook. "Somewhere safe." Adrian had pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. "Somewhere we can talk properly." "About what?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Lena saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Not threat, not danger. Something almost like respect? "About why you saw that laser sight when no one else did," Adrian said. "About why you moved fast enough to save me when trained soldiers would have hesitated. About why someone with your observational skills and reaction time is working as a waitress in a place like Luminaire. I told you. Your brother taught you about red dots. Fine. That explains knowledge. It doesn't explain instinct." Adrian set his phone aside, giving her his complete attention. "You didn't think, Lena. You acted. That kind of response is either trained into someone or it's inherent. Which is it?" "I don't know what you want me to say." "The truth." His voice softened slightly. "I'm not your enemy. But after tonight, you have enemies whether you want them or not. The people who tried to kill me will have seen what you did, or they'll find out soon enough. And they won't care that you're innocent. They'll only care that you're a problem for them too." The words sank in slowly, carrying their full terrible weight. Lena's hands were shaking now, adrenaline finally crashing as shock gave way to understanding. "You're saying they'll come after me?" "I'm saying it's a possibility we have to prepare for." "So what? I'm just supposed to trust you? Hide in your wherever we're going? Give up my life because you have dangerous enemies?" "No?" Adrian's answer surprised her. "You're supposed to make an informed choice. I'm going to show you what I do, who I am, what resources I have available to protect you. Then you'll decide whether you trust me or not. And if I decide I don't, then I'll have Dmitri take you anywhere you want to go, and I'll arrange protection that you'll never see or notice. Your life will continue as normally as possible under the circumstances." Adrian paused. "But I think you'll decide differently." "Why?" Lena heard the challenge in her own voice. "Because I'm scared. Because I have no choice? Because you're smart." Adrian's smile was slight but genuine. "And because you saw something tonight that most people never see, that the world has layers beneath its surface. Hidden structures, secret rules. You got a glimpse behind the curtain, Lena Hayes. And I think you're the kind of person who can't unknow what she's learned." He was right, and they both knew it. Lena looked away, out the window at Manhattan, flowing past in a blur of lights and rain. The city where she'd struggled for 3 years, where she'd worked herself to exhaustion for tips and empty smiles, where she'd been invisible and powerless and slowly drowning. That city was still there. But she was seeing it differently now. Seeing the dark spaces between buildings where deals were made, seeing the expensive cars that moved through streets like sharks through water, seeing the invisible lines of power and money and violence that connected everything beneath the surface. "I saved your life," she said quietly, not looking at him. "Yes. And now my life is never going to be the same." "No," Adrian agreed. "It's not." Lena turned back to face him. "Then you'd better make it worth it." Something flickered in those gray eyes. Amusement, approval, challenge accepted. "I intend to." The convoy turned onto a quieter street, the buildings here older and more elegant. Money whispered rather than shouted. They pulled up in front of what looked like a converted brownstone, 5 stories of tasteful brick and iron railings, windows glowing with warm light. "Where are we?" Lena asked. "One of my properties." Adrian was already opening his door as the vehicle stopped. "Safer than my main residence, more comfortable than a safe house. You'll stay here tonight." "I have to call my roommate. She'll be worried." "Already handled." Dmitri had materialized at Adrian's side with a phone. Lena's phone, she realized with a start. When had they gotten that? "We sent her a message from your phone explaining you witnessed an incident at work and needed to give a police statement. We'll send another in the morning saying it's taking longer than expected." "You went through my phone?" Indignation sparked through the exhaustion. "That's necessary," Adrian cut in, not unkindly. "I'm sorry, but we need to control the narrative of what happened tonight, for your protection as much as mine." Lena wanted to argue, wanted to rage at the violation, at the presumption, at everything that was happening, but she was so tired and the brownstone looked so warm, and the alternative was going back to her studio apartment where she'd lie awake all night jumping at every sound and wondering if someone with a rifle was watching her windows. "One night," she said firmly. "Then we figure out what happens next." Agreed. Inside, the brownstone was exactly what Lena expected. Expensive and tasteful and clearly designed by people who understood that real wealth whispered. Hardwood floors, crown molding, artwork that was probably original hanging on walls painted in subtle neutrals. A woman in her 50s appeared from somewhere, professional and unflappable, introducing herself as Mrs. Chen. "The guest room is ready," she said to Adrian, then turned to Lena with a kind smile. "I've laid out some clothes for you, dear. Probably not a perfect fit, but better than wet things. There's a bathroom attached, fresh towels, anything you need." "Thank you," Lena managed, overwhelmed by the casual efficiency of it all. Mrs. Chen led her upstairs to a room that was bigger than her entire apartment. The bed looked impossibly soft, the attached bathroom marble and chrome and heated floors. On the bed lay silk pajamas, a cashmere robe, slippers that looked hand-stitched. "Take your time," Mrs. Chen said gently. "Dr. Chen, my husband, will check you over when you're ready, just to be safe." When Lena was alone, she locked the bathroom door and leaned against it, breathing hard. Her reflection in the mirror showed a stranger, wide-eyed, pale, still in her damp luminaire uniform with its crisp lines now rumpled and water-stained. Her name tag was crooked. "Lena," it said in small capitals, as if that simple identifier meant anything anymore. She thought about her mother in Detroit, about the phone call she'd have to make eventually, thought about her student loans and her credit card debt and the rent due next week, thought about how 12 hours ago her biggest problem had been whether to pick up an extra shift on Saturday. Now someone had tried to kill a man, and she'd stopped it, and nothing would ever be simple again. Lena stripped off the wet uniform with numb fingers, stood under the shower's hot spray until her skin turned pink, and the shaking finally stopped. Dressed in the silk pajamas that probably cost more than her monthly salary, stared at herself in the mirror and tried to recognize the woman looking back. When she finally emerged, Dr. Chen was waiting, an older gentleman with kind eyes who checked her vitals with practiced efficiency, declared her physically fine if understandably shaken, and recommended rest. He left her with sleeping pills she didn't plan to take and a card with his number if she needed anything. Then she was alone again in the too big room, sitting on the too soft bed, listening to voices murmur somewhere below. Adrian's voice, she recognized it now, calm and commanding even in quiet conversation, making decisions about her life, probably, deciding what to do with the problem she'd become. Lena stood and walked to the window. It overlooked a small garden, rain-soaked and peaceful, City lights reflected in puddles. Safe. Protected. A gilded cage built by a dangerous man who claimed to owe her a debt. She thought about red dots and shattered windows, about the terror in Alexei's eyes and the casual way Adrian had acknowledged death, about power and violence and the hidden machinery that made the world turn beneath its pretty surface. "You can't unknow what you've learned," Adrian had said. He was right. Lena pressed her forehead against the cool glass and watched the rain fall, and wondered what she'd become by morning. Below, in a room lined with monitors and maps, Adrian Volkov stood with Dmitri and reviewed footage from a dozen security cameras. The shooter had been professional, in and out, no traces left beyond the spent casing they'd found on the Winston building roof. The sniper rifle was gone. The shooter was gone. Only questions remained. "Whoever it was, they knew your schedule," Dmitri said grimly. "Knew where you'd be sitting, knew the angles, they knew everything." Adrian's voice was flat. "Which means we have a leak, a significant one. I'll start internal review immediately. Do it quietly. I don't want whoever it is going to ground before we identify them." Adrian turned away from the screens, his mind already working through possibilities, probabilities, threats. "And I want around-the-clock protection on Lena Hayes. 2 teams, rotating shifts." "Adrian," Dimitri's tone was careful. "She's a civilian. A witness, yes. But keeping her this close, it's risky. Complicated. She saved my life. Which creates obligation, I understand. But protection doesn't require proximity. We can watch her from a distance, keep her safe without bringing her into—" "No." Adrian cut him off with absolute finality. "She reacted faster than either of us did, Dmitri. She saw a threat and neutralized it in under a second, with no training, no backup, nothing but pure instinct. That's not luck. That's capability." "So what? You want to recruit her?" Dimitri's skepticism was clear. "She's a waitress, Adrian. She's terrified. She has no idea what this world—" "Exactly." Adrian's smile was slight but sharp. "She has no idea. No preconceptions, no corrupted loyalties, no ties to any of our competitors. She's clean in a way that no one in our world ever is, and she's already proven she can keep her head when bullets start flying." Dmitri was quiet for a long moment. "You're serious about this?" "Someone tried to kill me tonight in a very bold, very public way. That means the game has changed. Old rules don't apply anymore." Adrian glanced toward the ceiling, toward where Lena slept in the room above. "She doesn't know it yet, but Lena Hayes just became the most valuable piece on my board. And if she refuses, if she wants nothing to do with this, then I'll respect that choice." Adrian's voice softened fractionally. "I'm not my father, Dmitri. I don't force people into service. But I think she's looking for something, a reason, a purpose, something that matters." You got all that from one conversation?" "I got it from watching her work for 3 hours before anyone tried to kill me." Adrian had been at Luminaire since 6 o'clock, had watched Lena move through her shift with that quiet competence, had noticed things others missed. She's drowning in a life that gives her nothing. Tonight I'm offering her a life raft. Whether she takes it or not, that's up to her. Dmitri sighed but nodded. "I'll set up the protection details." "And Dmitri?" Adrian waited until his oldest friend met his eyes. "Find out who took that shot. I want them alive if possible. I want to know who hired them, who gave them my schedule, who thought killing me in public was a good idea. I want everything." "Understood." When Dmitri left, Adrian remained standing in the security room, surrounded by screens that showed empty streets and safe perimeters. His reflection looked back at him from a darkened monitor, a man his father had built from childhood to lead an empire, to make hard decisions, to survive in a world where mercy was weakness and trust was fatal. But his father was dead now, had been for 2 years, and Adrian was trying, slowly, carefully, to build something different, something cleaner, something that didn't require quite so many bodies buried in quite so many foundations. Tonight, someone had tried to end that effort with a single bullet. They'd failed, thanks to a woman who'd had no reason to save him and every reason to look away. Adrian touched his chest where the bullet would have entered if Lena hadn't moved. Right through the heart. Professional shot, professional execution. If she'd hesitated even half a second, he'd be dead. Instead, he was alive. and Lena Hayes was asleep upstairs in silk pajamas, and tomorrow would bring questions neither of them could answer yet. The game had changed tonight. Adrian just had to figure out what the new rules were before someone else took another shot. Outside, the rain fell on Manhattan, washing blood from streets and secrets into sewers, while in a dozen different locations across the city, other people watched other screens and made other plans. The night was far from over. And for Lena Hayes, sleeping dreamlessly in a stranger's guest room while armed men guarded the perimeter, morning would bring choices that would define the rest of her life. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, she was safe. Tonight, she'd saved a life. Tomorrow, she'd learn what that life was actually worth. Morning came too soon, and not soon enough. Lena woke to unfamiliar silence. No traffic noise bleeding through thin walls. No neighbors arguing overhead. No radiator clanking its irregular rhythm. Just quiet, deep, and complete. The kind only serious money could buy in Manhattan. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was, why silk sheets whispered against her skin instead of her usual threadbare cotton, why the mattress felt like sleeping on a cloud. Then it all came rushing back. The red dot. The shattered window. Adrian Volkov's gray eyes measuring her like an equation he was learning to solve. Lena sat up slowly, her body aching in places that had nothing to do with physical injury. The bedside clock read 8:47 a.m. She'd slept nearly 10 hours, dreamless and deep, her exhausted body finally claiming the rest it desperately needed. Weak sunlight filtered through gauze curtains, painting the elegant room in shades of cream and gold. Someone had been in while she slept. Her luminaire uniform was gone, replaced by clothes laid carefully across a chair, designer jeans that looked her size, a soft cashmere sweater in deep blue, undergarments still tagged and packaged. Even shoes, expensive leather flats that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. The efficiency of it should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like evidence of how completely her life had been taken over in the span of 12 hours. Lena showered quickly, dressed in the provided clothes that fit perfectly because, of course, they did, and stood at the window looking down at the garden. In daylight, it was beautiful. Carefully tended roses, a small fountain, brick pathways that wound between flower beds, a sanctuary carved out of the city's chaos. Pretty prison, her mind whispered, but she pushed the thought away. A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Come in," Lena called, surprised her voice sounded steady. Mrs. Chen entered carrying a tray that smelled like heaven, fresh coffee, warm croissants, fruit that looked hand-selected for perfection. "Good morning, dear. I thought you might be hungry." "Thank you." Lena took the tray automatically, her stomach growling at the sight of real food. You didn't have to." Mr. Volkov insists his guests are well cared for. Mrs. Chen's smile was kind but professional. "He's requested to see you when you're ready. No rush. Take your time." When the door closed, Lena sat on the bed and ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Her phone sat on the nightstand where someone had placed it, fully charged. She picked it up with trembling fingers, scrolling through messages. 3 texts from her roommate Jess, all responding to the message Dmitri had sent from Lena's phone last night. The lies were smooth, practiced, witnessed an incident at work, helping police with statement, might take a few days. Don't worry. Jess's responses were sympathetic and unsuspecting. 2 missed calls from Marcus, her boss, not her brother, both probably termination notices. That job was gone. She'd known it the moment water hit Adrian's expensive suit. 1 email from her mother's nursing facility about an outstanding balance. $400 needed by next week, or they'd have to discuss alternative arrangements. Polite language for, "We'll kick your mother out if you don't pay." Lena set the phone down carefully, fighting the urge to throw it against the wall. This was her real life, these problems that didn't pause just because she'd stumbled into someone else's war. Bills and debts and responsibilities that had nothing to do with red dots and mysterious shooters. She finished eating because she'd learned never to waste food, then stood and straightened her borrowed clothes and walked to the door with the same resolve she'd felt going into double shifts, 1 foot forward, then the next, until the task was done. The brownstone was quiet as she descended the stairs, following the sound of voices to a room at the back of the first floor. The door stood partially open. Lena paused outside, listening. 3 possible contractors with the skill set, but only one with confirmed presence in the city last night. Dimitri's voice, crisp and analytical. Viktor Konstantin, former Russian Special Forces, went private 5 years ago. Specializes in high-value urban targets. Victor's expensive. Adrian sounded thoughtful rather than worried. Whoever hired him has serious resources. Or serious motivation. The preliminary ballistics came back. 338 Lapua Magnum, match-grade ammunition. He wasn't trying to wound you, Adrian. That was a kill shot, center mass, no room for error. Except there was an error. A 5'6" error who moves faster than she thinks. Lena felt heat rise to her cheeks at the description. She raised her hand to knock, but Adrian's next word stopped her. Any movement on the Alexei situation? He's in protective custody. Won't talk without his lawyer, but he's terrified. Whatever he owes to whoever, it's bad enough that he's more scared of them than he is of you. Then he's a fool. Adrian's voice went cold in a way that made Lena's skin prickle. The people he's protecting won't help him now. He's already failed them by leading us to tonight's meeting. They'll cut him loose or silence him. Probably both. You want me to press harder? No, let him sit. Fear does better work than fists. A pause. What about our guest? Lena knocked quickly before she could hear herself discussed further. The conversation cut off instantly. Come in, Adrian called. The room was clearly an office. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk with multiple monitors, leather chairs positioned for conversation rather than intimidation. Adrian stood by the window, dressed casually in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that probably cost more than Lena's entire wardrobe. Dmitri sat at the desk, a laptop open in front of him, papers scattered across the surface. Both men looked at her with that same assessing attention she was learning to recognize, being measured, being evaluated, being decided about. Good morning, Adrian said, his tone warmer than it had been moments ago discussing Alexei. I trust you slept well? Your guest room is nicer than anywhere I've ever lived, Lena said honestly. The question is why I'm still here instead of giving that police statement you promised. Direct. Adrian's smile was slight but genuine. I appreciate that. Please, sit. Lena remained standing. I'd rather have answers first. Fair enough. Adrian gestured to Dmitri, who touched something on his laptop. One of the monitors on the wall flickered to life, showing what looked like security footage from multiple angles. The restaurant, the street outside, the building across from Luminaire. This is from last night, Adrian explained. Watch. The footage played in synchronized quadrants. Lena saw herself moving through the restaurant, saw Adrian's table, saw the exact moment she looked toward the window, saw herself lunge forward, saw the window explode. But the fourth quadrant showed something she hadn't seen, a figure on the Winston building roof, rifle breaking down with professional speed, disappearing into the stairwell access within seconds of the shot. The timestamp showed 9:47:23 p.m. The shooter was gone by 9:47:51. 28 seconds, start to finish. Viktor Konstantin, Dmitri said, freezing the image on a blurry face half hidden by tactical gear. One of the best in the business. He's killed 17 people we know about, probably twice that many we don't. He doesn't miss. Except he missed you, Lena said to Adrian, her throat tight. Because you moved me. Adrian's gaze was steady on hers. Now watch this. The footage shifted to a different angle, street level, showing the restaurant entrance. A black sedan was parked across the street, engine running. As chaos erupted inside Luminaire, as people ran and screamed, a man emerged from the sedan's passenger side. He looked directly at the restaurant's windows, directly at where Lena had tackled Adrian. The image froze, enhanced, zoomed. The man's face filled the screen, sharp features, cold eyes, a scar running from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone. Sergei Volkov, Adrian said quietly. My cousin. He's been trying to take control of my organization for the past 18 months. Legitimate business competition, political maneuvering, legal challenges, all of it failed. So he's escalating. Lena stared at the frozen image. He hired the shooter. We believe so. Can't prove it yet, but the circumstantial evidence is compelling. Adrian moved closer, his expression grave. More importantly, Sergei saw what happened, saw you save me. And 3 hours ago, we intercepted communications suggesting he's very interested in finding out who you are. Ice flooded through Lena's veins. You said I might be in danger. You didn't say it was certain. Because last night it wasn't. This morning it is. Dmitri closed the laptop with a decisive click. Sergei plays chess with people's lives. If he thinks you matter to Adrian, he'll use you. If he thinks you saw something that could implicate him, he'll silence you. Either way, you're a problem he'll want to solve. So what? I hide? Forever? Lena heard her voice rising but couldn't stop it. I have a life. I have responsibilities. My mother is in a nursing home in Detroit. I have bills due. I can't just disappear because your cousin is a psychopath. No, Adrian agreed calmly. You can't, which is why I'm offering you a different option. I don't want your money. The words came out harsh, defensive. I'm not looking for a handout. Good, because I'm not offering one. Adrian gestured to the chair again. Please, Lena, sit. Let me explain properly. This time she did, if only because her legs were shaking. Adrian took the chair across from her, close enough that she could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the slight shadows under his eyes that suggested his sleep hadn't been as peaceful as hers. You saved my life, he began. That creates a debt I take very seriously. But more than that, you demonstrated capabilities I need. Observation, quick thinking, the ability to act under pressure without freezing. These aren't common skills. You want to hire me? Lena couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. To do what, exactly? I'm a waitress with a bachelor's degree in psychology I've never used. I don't have training. I don't have experience in whatever world you operate in. You have instincts, Adrian interrupted. Instincts that saved me when trained security didn't react fast enough. That's not something I can teach, Lena. That's inherent. And in my world, inherent capability matters more than credentials. Your world. Lena laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. You mean crime? You mean whatever illegal empire you run that makes people want to kill you in expensive restaurants? Adrian didn't flinch from the accusation. I mean business that operates in gray areas between legal and illegal. Import-export, primarily. Some legitimate, some less so. My father built this organization through violence and intimidation. I'm trying to transition it into something sustainable, something that doesn't require bodies to maintain market share. How noble, Lena said acidly, a kinder, gentler crime syndicate. Mock all you want. Adrian's voice remained level. It doesn't change your situation. Sergei knows your face now. Whether you work for me or not, whether you accept my protection or not, he sees you as leverage. The only question is whether you face that reality with resources and support or alone. The truth of it was a weight settling on Lena's chest, suffocating and inescapable. She thought about her studio apartment with its flimsy locks, about walking to the subway alone at night, about how easy it would be for someone like Sergei to find her, hurt her, use her. What exactly are you proposing? She asked finally, hating how small her voice sounded. Dmitri pulled out a folder, slid it across to her. Inside were documents, a job offer, an employment contract, NDAs, liability waivers. The salary listed made Lena's breath catch. It was more than she'd made in the past 2 years combined. You'd work directly for me, Adrian explained. Initially in an analytical capacity, you'd review security footage, help identify potential threats, analyze patterns in our business operations. Your psychology background would actually be valuable there. Understanding human behavior, predicting responses. That's not what you really want, though, is it? Lena met his eyes directly. You want someone you can trust because I have no connection to your world. Someone clean. Someone who owes you. I want someone smart enough to see through polite fictions, Adrian countered. Yes, your lack of prior affiliation is valuable. Yes, the debt between us matters. But mostly, Lena, I want to not waste potential when I see it. You're drowning in a life that gives you nothing. I'm offering you something different, something dangerous. Yes, something that could get me killed. That's already possible, Dmitri interjected. This way, at least you're getting paid for the risk. Lena looked down at the contract, at the numbers that could pay off her debts, get her mother into a better facility, give her breathing room she hadn't had since her brother died. Blood money, part of her whispered. Payment for selling out to criminals. But another part. The part that had reacted instantly to save Adrian's life. The part that had always known she was capable of more than endless shifts carrying plates for people who didn't see her. That part was intrigued. I need to think about this, she said. Of course. Adrian stood, extending his hand. Take the day. Mrs. Chen will show you the property. You can use the library, the gym, whatever you need. Tonight we'll have dinner, and you can give me your answer. Lena shook his hand automatically, feeling the controlled strength in his grip. And if my answer is no? Then I'll have your mother transferred to the best facility in Detroit with all expenses covered for the next 5 years. Set up a trust fund that ensures you can pay your debts and start fresh somewhere safe, and provide security that will watch over you without interfering in your life. Adrian's expression was absolutely serious. You saved me, Lena. I pay my debts regardless of whether you choose to work for me. It should have felt like manipulation. Should have felt like a trap. Instead, it felt like the first genuine offer anyone had made her in years. No hidden clauses, no unspoken expectations, just resources freely given because someone valued what she'd done. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why does one random act matter so much to you? Adrian was quiet for a long moment, something flickering behind those gray eyes. Because in my world, loyalty is currency, and betrayal is constant. Someone doing the right thing for no reason, expecting nothing in return, that's so rare it's precious. I won't waste it. He left then, Dmitri following, and Lena was alone with a contract that could change her life and questions she didn't know how to answer. The day passed in a strange blur. Mrs. Chen gave her a tour of the brownstone. 5 floors of carefully curated luxury, every room designed with purpose and taste. The 3rd floor held a library that made Lena's breath catch. Floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with first editions and rare volumes, comfortable chairs positioned near windows that overlooked the garden. She spent hours there, trying to read, trying to think, mostly just existing in the quiet while her mind spun through possibilities like a hamster on a wheel. The contract sat in her lap, words blurring together. Lunch appeared. Mrs. Chen materialized with perfectly grilled salmon and roasted vegetables, sparkling water with fresh lemon, chocolate mousse that melted on Lena's tongue. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing, her mind elsewhere. Around 3 p.m., her phone rang. Jess. Hey! Her roommate's voice was bright, unsuspecting. How's the police thing going? You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Lena forced cheer into her tone. Just taking longer than expected. Might be a few more days. God, that sucks. Marcus called here looking for you, by the way. He sounded pissed. I'm fired, aren't I? Oh, extremely fired. He used the word lawsuit about 6 times. Something about destroying property and assaulting customers? Jess's confusion was clear. What actually happened, Lena? I spilled water on someone important at exactly the wrong moment. Not technically a lie. It's complicated. They talked for a few more minutes, Lena deflecting questions with practiced ease before ending the call. The moment the line went dead, the forced brightness drained away, leaving her hollow and tired. Another job gone. Another bridge burned. Her life in ruins while she sat in a library that cost more than her yearly salary, contemplating working for a man whose enemies tried to kill him in public. The absurdity of it should have been funny. Instead, it just felt inevitable. Like every choice she'd made had been leading to this moment, this decision, this crossroads between the life she'd known and something entirely unknown. Evening found her back in the guest room, the contract spread across the bed while she analyzed every clause with the attention to detail her psychology training had taught her. It was surprisingly straightforward. Employment terms, salary, benefits, non-disclosure agreements, liability waivers. Nothing hidden, nothing deceptive. Adrian wasn't lying about what he was offering. The question was whether she could accept it. A knock came at 7. Mrs. Chen informing her dinner would be served at 8, suggesting she might want to change. Another dress had appeared in the closet. Simple black, elegant, perfect fit. Everything here fit perfectly, like they'd measured her in her sleep and tailored the world to her dimensions. Lena dressed mechanically, studying herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was a stranger. Expensive clothes, rested face, eyes that still held questions but less fear than yesterday. Whoever she'd been was dissolving. Whoever she was becoming hadn't solidified yet. She was in between, suspended, waiting to decide which direction gravity would pull her. Dinner was served in a small dining room on the 2nd floor, intimate and warm. Adrian was already there, changed into dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. He stood when she entered, gestured to the seat across from him. "Thank you for joining me," he said formally. "Did I have a choice?" The words came out sharper than intended. "Always." Adrian poured wine, red, expensive, probably older than Lena. "You could have stayed upstairs. You could have demanded to leave. You could have called the police and reported you were being held against your will. Would that have worked? Probably not. But you'd have been within your rights to try." He raised his glass slightly. "To choices, even difficult ones." Lena didn't touch her wine. "I read the contract. And? It's generous, almost too generous, which makes me think there's something you're not telling me." Adrian smiled, genuine pleasure lighting his expression. "See? This is exactly why I want you working for me. You question everything. You trust nothing. Those instincts will keep you alive." Mrs. Chen brought the first course, butternut squash soup with brown butter and sage, plated like art. Lena ate without tasting, waiting for Adrian to continue. "There are dangers I didn't fully articulate," he admitted. "Working for me means entering a world where violence is always possible, where loyalty is tested constantly, where one wrong move, one misplaced trust can be fatal. My father ruled through fear. I'm trying to build something different, but the transition is complicated. People resist change. People like Sergei want the old ways back. So I'd be caught in the middle of a power struggle. You're already caught in it. The moment you saved me, you became part of this whether you wanted to or not." Adrian set down his spoon, met her eyes directly. "I'm not going to lie and say working for me is safe. It's not. But neither is refusing and going back to your old life pretending none of this happened. Sergei doesn't forgive. Sergei doesn't forget." "You're saying I don't really have a choice?" "I'm saying all your choices have consequences now. The question is which consequences you can live with." The soup was replaced with roasted duck, crispy skin, and tender meat, served with cherry gastrique and roasted vegetables. Lena pushed it around her plate, her appetite gone. "Tell me about your brother," Adrian said quietly. The change of subject caught her off guard. "What?" "You said he was a soldier, that he taught you about red dots. I'd like to know more." "Why?" Defensiveness crept into her voice. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Because understanding you helps me understand whether this offer is right for both of us." Adrian's expression was open, genuinely curious. "You don't have to tell me, but I'm asking." Lena was quiet for a long moment, staring at her wine without drinking it. When she finally spoke, the words came slowly, painfully. "Marcus was 10 years older than me, raised me after our dad left when I was 8. Mom worked doubles at the hospital. Marcus made sure I did my homework, ate dinner, stayed out of trouble. The memories hurt in ways she'd stopped examining. He joined the army at 18, did 2 tours in Afghanistan, came home on leave when I was 17 and talked for hours about what he'd seen, what he'd done, the red dots, the fear, the waiting." "PTSD?" Adrian asked gently. "Probably, but he never got treatment. Went back for his 3rd tour and..." Lena's throat closed. "IED. He was gone before they could get him to medical. I was finishing my freshman year of college when the notification officers showed up at my dorm. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't pay the bills. Sorry doesn't bring him back." Lena finally took a drink of wine, letting it burn down her throat. "Mom fell apart after. Couldn't work anymore. Started having memory problems, early onset dementia. I dropped out of school to take care of her, but I couldn't manage both, so I put her in the facility and got whatever jobs I could find to pay for it. Hence Luminaire. Hence 3 years of carrying plates and pretending to smile while rich people treat me like furniture." The bitterness surprised her with its intensity. "I had plans once, graduate school, clinical psychology. Helping veterans with PTSD like Marcus never got helped. Now I just exist, survive, move from one shift to the next, trying not to drown." Adrian was quiet for a moment. "Your brother would be proud of you." "Would he?" Lena laughed without humor. "I threw my life away. I'm 28 with nothing to show for it except debt and exhaustion. What's there to be proud of? You survived. You took care of your mother when it would have been easier to walk away. You didn't become bitter or cruel despite every reason to be both. Adrian leaned forward slightly. And when bullets started flying, your first instinct was to save someone rather than run. That speaks to character, Lena. The kind of character that can't be taught or faked. Something in Lena's chest cracked at the words, at the simple acknowledgement of choices she'd made that no one else seemed to see. She blinked hard against tears that threatened. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. Work for you. Be part of your world. I'm not brave. I'm not special. I just reacted. Reaction is everything. Adrian's voice was firm. Hesitation gets you killed. Second guessing gets you killed. You moved without thinking because thinking would have wasted the only second that mattered. That's not luck, Lena. That's instinct. And instinct can be refined, trained, focused into something incredibly powerful. You sound like you're trying to recruit a soldier. I'm trying to offer you a purpose that matters more than carrying plates. Adrian pushed back from the table, stood, walked to the window overlooking the garden. I don't need soldiers. I have plenty of those. What I need are people who can think, who can question, who can see patterns others miss. You noticed that red dot when no one else did. What else might you notice that we're all too close to see? Lena stood as well, restless energy demanding movement. And if I fail, if I make a mistake that gets someone hurt or killed, then we deal with it, together. Adrian turned to face her. I'm not expecting perfection, Lena. I'm offering opportunity. What you make of it is up to you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Outside, night had fallen completely, the garden reduced to shadows and the faint gleam of fountain water. Somewhere in the city beyond this sanctuary, people were hunting, planning, deciding who lived and who became collateral damage in wars they didn't even know were being fought. Lena thought about her mother, about Marcus, about the life she'd been living that felt more like drowning than existing. Thought about the contract upstairs with its impossible salary and obvious dangers. Thought about Adrian's gray eyes watching her with something that looked almost like hope. If I do this, she said slowly, I need guarantees. My mother's care is protected no matter what happens to me. If I die or disappear, she's taken care of. Done. And I need honesty, complete honesty. No lies about what you're asking me to do, what risks I'm taking. I can handle danger if I know it's coming. I can't handle being blindsided. Agreed. And I need an exit. If this doesn't work, if I can't handle it, I can walk away without consequences. Adrian hesitated on that one. I can't guarantee no consequences. If you learn sensitive information and then leave, that creates risk for my organization. But I can guarantee I won't hurt you or prevent you from leaving if that's what you truly want. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe. But it was honest, which counted for more than Lena expected. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision settle into her bones. Okay, I'll do it. I'll work for you. Something flickered across Adrian's face. Relief, satisfaction, something else she couldn't name. He extended his hand across the space between them. Welcome to my organization, Lena Hayes. I promise you won't regret this. Lena shook his hand, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers, the strength in his grip. I already regret it, but I'm doing it anyway. Good. Adrian's smile was genuine. Regret means you're thinking. That's what I need. They finished dinner with easier conversation. Adrian explaining the structure of his organization, the people she'd be working with, the training she'd receive. Dmitri would teach her security protocols. A woman named Katya would handle weapons training. Others would fill in gaps as needed. You start Monday, Adrian said as Mrs. Chen cleared the last plates. That gives you the weekend to settle in, ask questions, change your mind if you need to. I won't change my mind. Lena was surprised to find she meant it. The decision had been made, and now forward momentum carried her. What happens now? Now you rest. Tomorrow we'll set up your living situation. You can stay here if you prefer, or we have other properties available. You'll need new identification, secure phone, bank accounts that can't be easily traced. Dmitri handles logistics. It all sounded so clinical, so organized, like becoming a different person was as simple as filing paperwork and learning new protocols. Maybe it was. Lena stood, suddenly exhausted despite having done nothing all day. Thank you for dinner, for the offer, for everything. Thank me when you've survived your first month. Adrian walked her to the door. Get some sleep. Tomorrow things start moving fast. Back in her room, Lena changed into the silk pajamas and stood at the window looking out at the garden. Somewhere out there, Sergei was planning. Victor, the shooter, was already moving on to his next target. Alexei was probably crying in whatever cell held him. And here she was, Lena Hayes, former waitress and college dropout, about to enter a world she didn't understand because a man with gray eyes had offered her purpose instead of pity. Her phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. Welcome to the team. Training starts 6 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late. Dmitry Lena laughed despite herself. 6 a.m. Like the universe was determined to make sure she knew this wouldn't be easy. She climbed into bed, turned off the lights, and lay staring at the ceiling while her mind refused to quiet. Every choice had led here. Every decision, from dropping out of school to taking the job at Luminaire to lunging forward when she saw that red dot. Maybe this was always where she was meant to end up. Maybe Marcus's stories and her own drowning life and one moment of instinct had all been preparing her for this. Or maybe she was rationalizing a choice born from desperation and fear. Either way, it was done. Monday, she'd become someone new. Someone who worked in shadows instead of light. Someone whose survival depended on skills she didn't have yet, but would have to learn fast. Somewhere in the brownstone below, Adrian Volkov sat in his office, reviewing security footage, making plans, deciding strategies. Building his cleaner empire one careful decision at a time, with Lena Hayes now part of that structure, whether she understood what that meant or not. And in another part of the city, Sergei Volkov looked at a photograph of a dark-haired woman tackling his cousin and smiled and began making plans of his own. The game had changed. All the players knew it. The only question was who would survive the next move. The alarm went off at 5:30, pulling Lena from dreams she couldn't remember into the pre-dawn darkness of her new reality. For a moment she lay still, disoriented by silk sheets and the absence of traffic noise, before memory crashed back. This was her life now. Had been for the past 6 weeks. She dressed quickly in the workout clothes laid out the night before. Another habit Dmitry had drilled into her: always prepare, never waste time on decisions that could be made in advance. The brownstone was quiet as she made her way downstairs, though she knew Mrs. Chen was already awake somewhere, moving through her morning routine with the same quiet efficiency she brought to everything. The gym was in the basement, a space that had probably been wine storage once, but was now equipped with everything from free weights to a shooting range. Dmitry was already there, running on the treadmill with the steady rhythm of someone who could maintain that pace for hours. "You're late," he said without breaking stride, though the clock on the wall read 5:58, 2 minutes before their scheduled start time. "I'm early," Lena corrected, moving to the mats to start stretching. Her muscles ached from yesterday's session, from the week before that, from 6 weeks of training that had reshaped her body into something stronger, more capable, foreign to her own eyes when she caught glimpses in mirrors. Early is on time. On time is late. Late is unacceptable. Dmitry finally slowed the treadmill, stepped off without visible fatigue despite the sweat darkening his shirt. Today we're focusing on situational awareness. You've learned to shoot, to fight, to think tactically. Now you need to learn to see. The next 2 hours were grueling in ways that had nothing to do with physical exertion. Dmitry walked her through exercises in observation, memorizing faces from photographs, identifying details in crime scene photos, tracking multiple subjects through crowded surveillance footage. Her psychology training helped, understanding human behavior and motivation, but the sheer volume of information she needed to process and retain was overwhelming. "Why does this matter?" Lena asked during a brief water break, frustrated by her inability to spot a weapon concealed in a photo that Dmitry had identified in seconds. "I'm supposed to be analyzing security protocols, not training to be a field operative." "You're training to survive." Dmitry's tone allowed no argument. "Analysis means nothing if you're dead because you missed a threat standing 3 feet away. Adrian brought you into this world. That makes you a target. The only question is whether you're a prepared target or an easy one." The words were harsh but not unkind. In the 6 weeks since Lena had agreed to work for Adrian, Dmitri had become something like a mentor, pushing her harder than anyone ever had while simultaneously watching her back with protective intensity. She'd learned he'd served with Russian special forces before joining Adrian's father's organization 20 years ago. Had seen things that gave him nightmares he never discussed. Had buried more friends than he cared to count. Again, he said, pulling up another photograph. You have 10 seconds to identify everything that doesn't belong. Lena forced her tired brain to focus, scanning the image of a restaurant interior for anomalies. Exit signs, security cameras, faces at tables, hands visible or hidden, postures tense or relaxed, objects that could be weapons, sight lines that could hide threats. 10 seconds felt like both an eternity and no time at all. The waiter, she said finally, second from the left. His stance is wrong, weight too far forward, like he's ready to move fast. And the bulge under his jacket, left side, either poorly fitted clothing or a shoulder holster. Good. What else? The woman at table 6 has her purse positioned for quick access, and she's not eating despite food in front of her, watching the room instead of her companion. Could be security, could be threat assessment. Better. And? Lena scanned again, looking for what she'd missed. The kitchen door is propped open when it should be closed. Fire hazard or deliberate? Someone wanting a clear exit route without delay. Excellent. Dmitri's rare approval warmed her despite the exhaustion. You're learning to see patterns instead of details. That's survival instinct developing. Keep practicing, and it becomes automatic. By 8 a.m., Lena was back upstairs, showered and dressed in clothes that still felt too expensive, sitting at the breakfast table while Mrs. Chen served eggs and toast and fruit arranged like art. Adrian appeared at 8:15, perfectly put together despite whatever late night he'd had, his greeting warm but distracted. Morning briefing in 20 minutes, he said, pouring coffee with the precision of someone who'd made routine into ritual. We've had some developments with the Mikhailov situation that need discussion. The Mikhailov situation. Lena had learned the language of Adrian's world came wrapped in euphemism, situations instead of conflicts, developments instead of violence, discussions instead of negotiations backed by implicit threat. It was a verbal dance she was still learning the steps to. The morning briefing happened in Adrian's office, the one room in the brownstone that felt like the command center it actually was. Dmitri joined them, along with Katya, the weapons trainer who'd spent 3 weeks teaching Lena that guns were tools requiring respect, not fear, and 2 others whose names Lena had learned but whose roles remained somewhat opaque. Mikhailov is pushing back on the territory agreements, Dmitri began without preamble, pulling up maps on one of the monitors. He's claiming our distribution through the port violates terms we negotiated 6 months ago. He's claiming that, or he actually has legitimate grievance. Adrian's question was directed at Lena, and she felt everyone's attention shift to her. This was her role now, the position she'd carved out in the 6 weeks since joining the organization. Analyst. Interpreter. The person who looked at situations without the baggage of history or loyalty and asked the questions others wouldn't. Lena studied the maps, the distribution routes, the contracts she'd spent the previous evening reviewing. The language in the original agreement is ambiguous about whether port access includes warehousing within a 5-mile radius. We've been using warehouse facilities in Zone 3, which could be interpreted as violating the spirit of the agreement even if the letter is unclear. So he has a point, Adrian said. He has an argument. Whether it's made in good faith or he's manufacturing grievance to renegotiate terms in his favor, that requires understanding his current financial situation, which I don't have enough data to assess. His current financial situation is desperate, Katya interjected. We've been monitoring his accounts. He's hemorrhaging money in 3 sectors, probably through embezzlement by his own lieutenants. This push against us is likely distraction from internal problems. Adrian absorbed this quietly, fingers steepled beneath his chin in the gesture Lena had learned meant he was calculating probabilities and outcomes. If we give him the warehouse space, does it actually hurt our operations? Minimal impact, Dmitri answered. We have alternative facilities. It's not about the warehouses. It's about appearing weak. Give ground here, and others will test our boundaries elsewhere. Not giving ground also invites conflict we don't need. Adrian looked at Lena again. Your read? She took a breath, aware she was about to disagree with Dmitri, aware that challenging the old guard was part of why Adrian valued her, and part of why some resented her presence. Give him the warehouses. Frame it as goodwill, as recognizing legitimate ambiguity in the original contract. It costs us little, gives him a win he can show his own people, and demonstrates we're reasonable to negotiate with. That reputation has strategic value long term. It makes us look soft, Dmitri argued. It makes us look confident, Lena countered. Only the weak worry about small concessions. We can afford to be generous because our position is secure. That sends a stronger message than fighting over warehouses we don't actually need. The room was silent for a moment. Then Adrian smiled, slight but genuine. Contact Mikhailov, offer him the warehouse space in Zone 3, frame it exactly as Lena suggested, and leak to the other organizations that were consolidating operations for efficiency, not because we were pressured. Control the narrative. The meeting continued for another hour, covering logistics and shipments and the 1,000 small decisions that kept the organization running. Lena contributed where she could, stayed silent when she had nothing useful to add, and tried to map the complex web of relationships and rivalries that defined Adrian's world. When the others finally left, Adrian gestured for Lena to stay behind. She settled back into her chair, exhaustion creeping through despite the coffee. "You handled that well," Adrian said, moving to the window that overlooked the street. "Dmitri respects you for pushing back. He might not show it, but he does. He thinks I'm naive, that I don't understand how this world actually works. You're naive about some things. That's valuable. We're also steeped in how things have always been done that we miss obvious solutions." Adrian turned to face her. "How are you really doing? 6 weeks in. Honest answer." Lena considered lying, offering the easy reassurance that everything was fine. She was adjusting, no problems. But Adrian had asked for honesty, and honesty was the foundation their working relationship required. "I'm exhausted," she admitted. "Physically, mentally, emotionally. Every day feels like drinking from a fire hose. New information, new skills, new dangers I have to prepare for. I barely remember what sleeping through the night felt like, and sometimes I wake up and can't believe this is actually my life now." "Do you regret it?" "Not yet. Ask me again after I've been shot at." The attempt at humor fell flat, both of them aware that being shot at was a real possibility, not hypothetical. "I keep thinking about my old life. How simple it was, even drowning in it. Wake up, go to work, come home, repeat. No one trying to kill me. No learning to field strip weapons or memorize the faces of people who might be threats. You can still walk away," Adrian said quietly. "The offer stands. Financial support, protection from a distance, your mother's care continues. You're not trapped here, Lena. I know, that's part of what makes it bearable. Knowing it's my choice to stay, not obligation or coercion." She stood, moved to the window beside him. Outside, the city was waking up. People heading to normal jobs with normal problems, completely unaware of the hidden machinery that operated beneath their everyday reality. "I just need to find my footing, figure out who I am in this new life instead of constantly comparing it to the old one. That takes time. Be patient with yourself." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Lena asked the question that had been nagging at her for days. "Tell me about Sergei. Really tell me. Not the sanitized version you gave me at the beginning." Adrian's expression darkened. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. If he's hunting me, I need to understand who he is, what drives him, what makes him dangerous beyond the obvious." Adrian moved to his desk, pulled out a file folder thick with documents and photographs. "Sergei is my cousin, son of my father's younger brother. We grew up together, trained together. My father groomed me to lead the organization, and Sergei was supposed to be my second, my enforcer, the ruthless one who did what I couldn't stomach." He spread photographs across the desk, surveillance images, crime scene photos, financial documents. "When my father died and I took over, I started making changes, moving toward legitimacy, cutting ties with the most violent operations. Sergei saw it as weakness, as betrayal of everything our fathers built. He challenged me, tried to gather support among the old guard, failed. So he split off, took a portion of the organization with him, and has been trying to either take back control or destroy what I'm building ever since." Lena studied the photographs, seen Sergei in various contexts, meetings, public events, surveillance shots that captured him unaware. He looked like Adrian, same sharp features and gray eyes, but there was a coldness in his expression that Adrian never carried. "The attempt on your life at Luminaire," she said slowly, understanding crystallizing. That was escalation, moving from business competition to actual assassination. Yes, which means he's getting desperate or more confident, probably both. Adrian gathered the photographs, returned them to the folder. That's why your security training is so important. Why Dmitry pushes you so hard. Sergei will come at me through anyone he thinks I value, and he's figured out that I value you. The implications settled heavy in the space between them. Lena had known intellectually that she was a target, but hearing it stated plainly made it real in ways she'd been avoiding. "How do I prepare for someone like that?" she asked quietly. "You become someone he can't easily break. Someone who understands his tactics, sees his moves before he makes them, doesn't panic when threatened." Adrian's hand settled on her shoulder, warm and steady. "You become what you've been becoming these past 6 weeks. Stronger, smarter, more dangerous than you look. That's your best protection." The rest of the day was filled with more mundane tasks, reviewing security protocols for an upcoming shipment, analyzing expense reports for anomalies that might indicate embezzlement or skimming, sitting through meetings about details so boring Lena struggled to stay focused. This was the reality of Adrian's organization stripped of drama. It was a business, and businesses required endless administration. But threaded through the mundane were moments of stark reminder that this wasn't actually normal. A phone call that made Adrian's expression go cold and dangerous. A visitor who arrived with armed escorts and left looking shaken. A news report about a warehouse fire that Dmitry watched with grim satisfaction before changing the channel. Violence was always there, just beneath the surface. Waiting. Evening found Lena back in the library, her refuge within the brownstone. She'd claimed a corner as her workspace, setting up her laptop and files, surrounding herself with books like protective walls. The light was fading outside, city lights beginning to sparkle through the gathering dusk. Knock, knock. Katya appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Got a minute?" Lena gestured to the chair across from her. Katya settled into it with the unconscious grace of someone completely comfortable in her own body, the kind of confidence Lena envied. "Dmitry says you're doing well," Katya began. "Learning fast, asking good questions." "I'm trying. Trying isn't the same as committing." Katya's directness was jarring after weeks of careful politeness from most of Adrian's people. "You still have one foot out the door. Still thinking of this as temporary." "How would you know that?" "Because I've seen it before. People who join thinking they can dip their toes in this world and walk away clean when it gets too scary." Katya leaned forward. "Let me save you some pain. It doesn't work that way. You're already in, Lena. The moment you saved Adrian's life, you committed whether you realized it or not. The only question is whether you accept that and adapt, or keep pretending you have an exit." The words stung because they were true. Lena had been holding part of herself back, maintaining emotional distance, telling herself this was just a job she could quit if it became too much. But Katya was right. That ship had sailed the night at Luminaire. "How do I commit?" Lena asked quietly. "How do I make peace with violence and danger being my new normal?" "You stop thinking of it as making peace and start thinking of it as survival." Katya's expression softened slightly. "I grew up in Moscow, in neighborhoods where violence was currency. Learned to fight before I learned to read. Came to America thinking I'd escape that world, but it followed me. Always does. So I stopped running from it and learned to use it instead. Made myself valuable because I could do things others couldn't stomach." "That sounds lonely." "It is, but it's also powerful. And power in this world, real power, not the fake kind men wave around to compensate, that comes from being someone others need but can't control." Katya stood, moved to the window. "Adrian needs you because you see things we don't. You're not corrupted by history or loyalty to the old ways. That makes you valuable, but you'll never be truly safe until you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start seeing yourself as someone who chose this path deliberately." "I did choose it. You chose survival. That's different than choosing power. Katya turned back, her dark eyes sharp with challenge. Figure out what you actually want from this life, Lena. Not what you're willing to tolerate, but what you want. Then take it. That's how you survive here. Not by being grateful for protection, but by making yourself indispensable. After Katya left, Lena sat alone with those words echoing through her mind. What did she want? Not just survival, not just safety for her mother, not just escape from drowning. What did she actually want? Purpose, she realized. She wanted to matter. Wanted her insights and questions and fresh perspective to contribute to something larger than herself. Wanted to help Adrian build what he was trying to build. A cleaner version of his father's empire, something sustainable and less violent. She wanted to prove that people could change, that history didn't have to be destiny. And underneath it all, quieter but undeniable, she wanted Adrian's respect, his trust. The way his face softened when she said something that shifted his thinking. The warmth in his eyes when she challenged him successfully. She wanted to be someone he valued not just for what she could do, but for who she was. That realization was dangerous. Lena recognized it immediately, the way feelings were developing that had nothing to do with professional respect and everything to do with the man himself. The way her heart rate picked up when he entered a room. The way she noticed details about him. The slight scar above his eyebrow. The way he ran his hand through his hair when frustrated. The rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. She was falling for him. Had been for weeks without admitting it. And that was the most dangerous thing she could possibly do in this world where emotions became leverage and caring about someone made you vulnerable. You're thinking too hard. Adrian's voice from the doorway made her jump. I can hear your brain working from the hallway. Just processing everything. It's been a long day. Lena closed her laptop, pushing dangerous thoughts aside. How did the Mikhailov situation resolve? Exactly as you predicted. He took the offer, we controlled the narrative, and I've already gotten 3 calls from other organizations asking about our consolidation strategy. Adrian moved into the room, settled into the chair Katya had vacated. You have good instincts for this, Lena. Better than people who've been doing it for years. I just look at situations without all the baggage of history. Makes patterns easier to see. It's more than that. You understand people. What motivates them, what they fear, what they'll accept as victory even when they're actually losing. That's psychology applied to real-world problems. It's exactly what this organization needs. The praise warmed her, dangerous and addictive. Lena forced herself to focus on practical matters instead of the way Adrian's presence filled the space. Dmitry mentioned we have a shipment coming in next week that might be problematic. What's the situation there? They spent the next hour discussing logistics and potential complications, the conversation easy and collaborative. This was what Lena loved about working with Adrian. He listened, considered her input seriously, pushed back when he disagreed, but remained open to being convinced. It was partnership in ways she'd never experienced, even in relationships that were supposed to be partnerships. You should get some rest, Adrian said finally, glancing at his watch. It's nearly 11, and I know Dmitry has you up at dawn. He's relentless. He's keeping you alive. There's a difference. Adrian stood, and Lena did as well, aware of how close they were in the small space between desk and chair. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're still here. I know it's been difficult adjusting to all of this, but you're making a real difference. Thank you, Lena managed, acutely aware of the inches between them, of the way Adrian's eyes held hers with an intensity that had nothing to do with business. That means a lot. For a moment, something hung in the air between them, unspoken and electric. Then Adrian stepped back, breaking the spell, offering a slight smile that looked almost regretful. Good night, Lena. Sleep well. After he left, Lena sat back down, her heart hammering, telling herself it was just exhaustion making her read too much into simple interactions. Adrian was her employer, her mentor, her protector. Nothing more. Couldn't be anything more. Not in this world where personal relationships became complications that got people killed. But as she finally climbed the stairs to her room, as she lay in the too-soft bed staring at the ceiling, Lena couldn't quite convince herself that what she'd seen in Adrian's eyes was only professional regard. And she couldn't quite convince herself that what she felt was only gratitude. The world she'd entered 6 weeks ago was revealing new complications every day. Not just external threats and violence and the constant need for vigilance, But internal complications, emotional entanglements, the dangerous territory between professional and personal. Lena fell asleep, still trying to map that territory, still trying to convince herself she could navigate it without losing her way completely. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, indifferent to individual struggles. Somewhere Sergei was planning his next move. Somewhere threats were developing that would test everything Lena had learned. But for tonight, in the safety of the brownstone, she could rest, could let her guard down just enough to sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, new moments that would define who she was becoming. Tonight, she was simply tired, and that was enough. The warehouse smelled like rust and old oil. That particular decay that came with abandoned industrial spaces slowly being reclaimed by time. Lena's footsteps echoed too loud against concrete floors scarred with decades of heavy machinery dragging across them, leaving gouges that looked like claw marks in the dim light filtering through broken skylights above. She shouldn't have come alone. Every instinct Adrian had spent 3 months teaching her screamed that walking into an unfamiliar location without backup was suicide. But the message had been clear. Come alone or the information dies with the messenger, and the information was too important to ignore. The traitor's identity. Finally within reach after weeks of dead ends and false leads. Lena moved deeper into the warehouse, her hand resting on the Glock holstered beneath her jacket. 3 months ago, she had never touched a gun. Now the weight of it was familiar, almost comforting. Katya had been a relentless teacher, drilling her until muscle memory replaced conscious thought, until drawing and firing became as natural as breathing. "Hello?" Her voice carried through the empty space, bouncing off metal beams and concrete pillars. "I'm here. Show yourself." Silence answered. Then, from somewhere to her left, a sound. Footsteps, deliberate and unhurried. A figure emerged from behind a stack of rotting pallets, features obscured by shadows, and a hood pulled low. "You came." The voice was male, young, nervous energy vibrating through the words. "I wasn't sure you would. You said you had information about the mole in Volkov's organization." Lena kept her distance, staying in open space where she could see approaches from multiple angles. Adrian's training, always control the terrain. "So talk." "First the money. 20,000, like we agreed." Lena pulled the envelope from her jacket, held it up, but didn't move closer. "Information first. If it's good, you get paid." The figure hesitated, then pushed back his hood. Young, maybe early 20s, with the washed-out look of someone who'd spent too much time in places without sunlight. Lena recognized the type from her old neighborhood. Street-level operator, probably running messages or small packages, definitely expendable. "His name is Viktor Petrov," the young man said, words tumbling out fast like he was afraid of losing his nerve. "He's been Volkov's head of security for 5 years, but he's been feeding information to Sergei for the last 8 months. Everything. Schedules, routes, safe houses, all of it." Lena's blood went cold. Victor. She knew him, had trained with him, trusted him to watch her back during operations. The betrayal cut deeper than she expected. "How do you know this?" she demanded. "I work for Sergei's crew. Low level, just deliveries, but I hear things. Victor meets with Sergei's lieutenant every Tuesday at a place in Brooklyn. I've seen the exchanges myself. Money for information, always the same routine." "Why are you telling me this? Why betray your own employer?" The young man's face twisted with something that looked like grief or guilt, or both. "Because Victor sold out my brother 2 months ago, told Sergei where to find him, and now my brother's dead. I can't touch Victor myself, he's too protected. But you can. Volkov can." It made sense. The personal motivation rang true in a way that pure greed wouldn't have. Lena lowered the envelope slightly, considering. "What's your name?" she asked. "Does it matter?" "It does to me." "Dmitri. Dmitri Sokolov." He took a step forward, hand extended toward the money. "Now pay me so I can disappear before Sergei figures out I'm talking." Lena was about to move, about to close the distance and hand over the envelope, when something caught her eye. A reflection in the dirty window behind Dmitri, there and gone so fast she almost missed it. A glint of metal. A shape moving into position. The red dot appeared on Dmitri's chest before Lena could scream a warning. She lunged forward, training overriding conscious thought. reaching for the young man to pull him down and out of the line of fire. But she was too slow, too far away. And the shooter wasn't Victor Constantine this time. This shooter didn't miss. The shot cracked through the warehouse like thunder in an enclosed space. Dimitri's body jerked backward, the impact spinning him around before he crumpled to the concrete. Blood spread beneath him in a dark pool that reflected the broken skylights above. Lena hit the ground behind a concrete pillar, weapon drawn, heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. She'd seen death before in the past 3 months. Sanitized bodies and morgue photos, aftermath of violence captured on security footage. But this was different. This was immediate and real, and her fault for being too slow. "Lena Hayes?" A voice echoed through the warehouse, amplified somehow, coming from everywhere and nowhere. Always in the wrong place at the right time. Or is it the right place at the wrong time? I can never decide. She knew that voice, had heard it in recordings, in briefings. Sergei Volkov, Adrian's cousin, the man who'd been hunting her since that first night at Luminaire. "Show yourself," Lena called out, scanning for the shooter's position. The shot had come from the catwalks above, but those metal walkways offered dozens of hiding spots in the shadows. "Why would I do that when I have you exactly where I want you?" Sergei's laughter was cold, amused. "You're becoming quite the problem, Miss Hayes, my cousin's new protégé. His little project. Did you really think I wouldn't notice how much he values you?" "Victor told you." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. "He fed you false information to lure me here. Victor has been very helpful, yes, though I suspect his helpfulness is about to expire. Can't have people knowing I employ traitors. Bad for business, bad for reputation. But that's a problem for later. Right now, I'm more interested in you." Lena pressed against the pillar, mind racing through options. The warehouse had multiple exits, but reaching any of them meant crossing open space. Her phone was in her pocket, but calling for backup would take time she didn't have. She was alone, outgunned, and Dimitri's body was cooling on the concrete 10 feet away because she'd been stupid enough to walk into an obvious trap. "What do you want?" she called out, stalling. Every second she kept Sergei talking was a second to think, to plan. "Initially, I wanted leverage against Adrian, a way to force his hand, make him cooperate with my very reasonable requests to share control of our family business." Sergei's voice moved, circling, making it impossible to pinpoint his location. "But I'm realizing you might be worth more than simple leverage. You've learned quickly these past months, adapted to our world with surprising ease. Perhaps you'd consider a change of employer." "Not interested." "You haven't heard my offer." "Don't need to. I'm not for sale." "Everyone's for sale, Miss Hayes. It's just a question of price." A pause. "Your mother, for instance, still in that facility in Detroit, I believe? Memory Care Wing, room 237. The staff there is very friendly, very accommodating. I'm sure they'd be equally accommodating to someone offering them enough money to look the other way for a few minutes." Terror spiked through Lena's chest. "Touch her and I'll kill you myself." "Such spirit! I see why Adrian likes you." Sergei laughed again. "But empty threats bore me. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to put down your weapon, walk out the north entrance where my car is waiting, and come with me quietly. In exchange, your mother continues her peaceful existence, unaware that her daughter has made powerful enemies. And if I refuse, then the sniper currently aiming at your position puts a bullet through your skull. My people visit Detroit tonight, and Adrian loses both his newest asset and whatever leverage he thought you gave him. Everyone loses. Very inefficient." Lena's mind raced. She could call the bluff, try to shoot her way out, trust that Adrian's training had prepared her for this. But the red dot she'd seen on Dimitri proved the shooter was real, was skilled, was waiting. And the threat against her mother wasn't something she could risk being real. Adrian's words from 3 months ago echoed in her memory. "When you're outplayed, change the game." "Okay," Lena called out, making her decision. "I'm putting down my weapon. Don't shoot." She set the Glock on the concrete, kicked it away from her position, then stood slowly with hands raised. The warehouse felt vast and empty around her, every shadow potentially hiding threats. Dimitri's body was a dark shape in her peripheral vision, accusation and warning both. "Very wise." Sergei's voice came from directly ahead now, and he emerged from behind a stack of crates with 3 armed men flanking him. He was younger than Adrian, sharper features, the same gray eyes, but colder somehow. His suit was impeccable despite the warehouse setting. You see? Cooperation is so much more efficient than violence. Lena kept her hands visible, kept her expression neutral. What now? Now we take a ride. I have some questions about my cousin's operations, and you're going to answer them, thoroughly and honestly if you value your continued breathing. The armed men moved to flank her, professional and efficient. Lena didn't resist as they patted her down, removing her phone, a backup knife she'd kept in her boot, the small radio earpiece that wasn't currently connected to anything. They were thorough but not rough. Professionals doing a job. This way. Sergei gestured toward the north entrance. My car is waiting. They moved through the warehouse in a tight group, Lena surrounded on all sides. Her mind cataloged everything, the positions of her captors, their weapons, the exits she was being steered away from, looking for opportunities, for weaknesses, for any chance to turn this around. They were almost to the entrance when the lights died. Complete darkness slammed down like a physical thing. Lena heard confused shouts, the sound of weapons being raised, feet shuffling as Sergei's men tried to reorient. She dropped instantly, muscle memory and training taking over, rolling away from where she'd been standing. Gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness in strobing bursts, automatic weapons firing at shadows, at nothing, panic overriding discipline. Lena pressed herself flat against the concrete, hands over her head, as bullets whined off metal beams and shattered what remained of the skylights above. Then, as suddenly as it started, silence. Lena waited, breathing shallow, every sense straining against the darkness. Footsteps approached, slow and measured. A flashlight clicked on, beam cutting through the shadows to illuminate Sergei's men sprawled on the ground. Not dead, she could see their chests rising and falling, but unconscious, dark darts protruding from their necks. You can get up now. Adrian's voice calm and controlled like they were meeting for coffee instead of a warehouse shootout. It's safe. Lena stood on shaking legs. The flashlight beam found her face, then lowered politely. In its ambient glow, she could see Adrian flanked by Dmitri and 4 others, all armed, all moving with the casual efficiency of people who did this regularly. How did you... she started. You think I'd let you walk into a meeting with an unknown contact without backup? Adrian moved to her side, his hand finding her elbow to steady her. We've been watching the whole time. When Victor's communication started looking suspicious, we knew something was wrong. This was the confirmation we needed. Victor. The name tasted like poison. He really is the traitor. Was the traitor. Dimitri's voice came from near the entrance. Found him in a car outside. Single shot to the head. Sergei tied up his loose ends before trying to grab you. Lena's stomach turned. She'd known Victor, trained with him, shared meals with him. The betrayal hurt in ways she hadn't expected. And Sergei? She asked. Gone. Adrian's frustration was evident. He ran the moment the lights went out. Had an escape route planned, probably multiple exits. We'll find him, but not tonight. The warehouse lights flickered back on, harsh fluorescence revealing the scene in brutal detail. Sergei's men were being zip-tied and dragged toward waiting vehicles. Dimitri's body still lay where he'd fallen, but someone had covered him with a tarp. Small mercy, but mercy nonetheless. I'm sorry about the kid, Adrian said quietly, following her gaze. We couldn't move fast enough. He was telling the truth. About Victor, about everything. Lena's voice sounded distant to her own ears. And he died for it because I was too slow. You were outnumbered and outgunned. Adrian turned her to face him, his hands firm on her shoulders. What happened to Dmitri isn't your fault. It's Sergei's and Victor's, and mine for not catching the traitor sooner. You tracked me here. It was statement, not question. How? The phone we gave you has a tracker embedded. So does the watch, the belt, and a subdermal chip we implanted while you were under anesthesia for that routine physical last month. Adrian's expression was unapologetic. I told you I'd be honest. The honest truth is that in this world, privacy is a luxury we can't afford. Not when people like Sergei are hunting you. Lena should have been angry. Should have felt violated by the revelation that she'd been tracked without her knowledge. Instead, she felt something closer to relief. She hadn't been alone. When things went wrong, backup had been there. Take me home, she said quietly. Please, I need to think. The convoy back to the brownstone was silent. Lena staring out the window at the city passing in a blur of lights. Her hands were still shaking, adrenaline crash hitting her in waves of nausea and exhaustion. She'd come so close to dying tonight, so close to being taken, tortured for information, used as leverage against Adrian. The thought of what Sergei might have done to her made her skin crawl. Back at the brownstone, Mrs. Chen took one look at Lena's face and disappeared, returning minutes later with tea and something stronger. Lena accepted the whiskey gratefully, letting it burn down her throat and settle the worst of the shaking. Adrian dismissed the others but stayed himself, sitting across from her in the library, where she'd spent so many hours over the past months. The books watched them from their shelves, silent witnesses to a conversation Lena knew would be difficult. "I want to quit," she said finally, the words harder than expected. "I can't do this. Tonight proved it. I'm not cut out for this world. Tonight proved you survived a trap designed to kill you." Adrian's tone was gentle but firm. "You kept your head. You didn't panic. You made the smart choice even when it meant surrendering. That takes strength, Lena." "I got someone killed. Dmitri was dead the moment he decided to betray Sergei. Nothing you did or didn't do would have changed that." Adrian leaned forward. "This world is brutal. I've never pretended otherwise. People die. Betrayals happen. Violence is constant. But you're surviving it, learning from it, becoming stronger because of it." "I don't want to become stronger like this." Lena's voice broke. "I don't want to be the kind of person who watches kids die on warehouse floors and then goes home and drinks tea like it's just another Tuesday." "Then don't be that person." Adrian's eyes held hers. "Be the person who remembers Dmitri's name, who honors what he tried to do, who uses what happened tonight to be better, smarter, more careful. The world doesn't need more people who become numb to death. It needs people who feel it and choose to keep fighting anyway." The words hit harder than Lena expected. She thought about her brother Marcus, about his struggles with what he'd seen in Afghanistan, about how he'd tried to hold on to his humanity in a situation designed to strip it away. He'd failed, ultimately. The memories and guilt had eaten him from inside until there was nothing left but rage and pain. But he'd tried. And maybe that was what mattered. "Sergei threatened my mother," Lena said quietly. "He knew where she was, what room she's in. How do I protect her from someone who can reach anywhere?" "You already are protecting her." Adrian pulled out his phone, showed her a security feed. "I moved her yesterday to a private facility upstate. Better care, better security, completely off the books. No one knows where she is except me, you, and the medical staff I personally vetted." Lena stared at the footage showing her mother in a beautiful room, sunlight streaming through windows, a nurse helping her with lunch. Safe. Protected. "You didn't tell me," she said. "Would you have let me if I'd asked?" "No." "Exactly, so I didn't ask." Adrian pocketed the phone. "I told you I'd be honest. Here's honesty. I will do whatever it takes to protect you and the people you love. Sometimes that means making decisions without your input. Sometimes it means violating your privacy or your autonomy. I won't apologize for that, but I will always act in your best interest. And if our definitions of best interest don't align, then we argue about it, and usually you win." Adrian's smile was slight but genuine. "You've changed how we operate, Lena. The past 3 months, you've questioned procedures, challenged assumptions, forced us to think differently about how we do business. Some of my people hate you for it. But the smart ones recognize what you bring, a perspective uncorrupted by how things have always been done." Lena took another drink, letting the words settle. "I don't feel like I'm changing anything. I feel like I'm barely surviving." "That's because you're in the middle of it. But look at what you've accomplished. You learned weapons handling in weeks what takes most people months. You've analyzed patterns in our operations that we'd missed for years. You've identified inefficiencies, security gaps, potential vulnerabilities. And tonight, when Sergei had you cornered, you made the play that kept you alive long enough for backup to arrive. By surrendering, by being smart." Adrian stood, moved to the window overlooking the garden. "Pride gets you killed in this world. Knowing when to fight and when to fold, that's wisdom. You're learning it faster than anyone I've trained." The praise should have felt good. Instead, it just felt heavy, like expectations piling on top of responsibility. Lena set down her glass, suddenly exhausted. "I don't want to quit," she admitted. "I hate that I don't want to quit, but I don't. Is that insane?" "Probably. Adrian's reflection smiled in the dark window. But sanity is overrated. The question isn't whether you're crazy for staying, it's whether you can live with what staying requires. Which is? Accepting that people like Dmitri will die sometimes, that you'll make mistakes, that violence will find you no matter how careful you are. Adrian turned to face her. This world doesn't forgive weakness. It doesn't reward nobility. It just keeps moving, and you either move with it or get crushed beneath it. Can you live with that? Lena thought about the question seriously, thought about Dimitri's body under that tarp, about Victor's betrayal, about the red dot on Adrian's chest 3 months ago that had started all of this. Thought about her mother safe in that upstate facility, about the debts that were finally paid, about the purpose she'd found in a world that should have destroyed her. I can live with it, she said finally. I don't like it, but I can live with it. That's all I ask. Adrian extended his hand. Stay. Keep questioning. Keep pushing back when I'm wrong. Keep being the perspective I need, even when it's inconvenient. Can you do that? Lena stood and took his hand, feeling the now familiar warmth of his grip. Somewhere in the past 3 months, this man had gone from dangerous stranger to something else. Mentor, ally, maybe even friend. The shift had been so gradual she hadn't noticed until now. I can do that, she agreed. They stood there for a moment, hands clasped, something unspoken passing between them. Then Adrian released her gently. Get some rest. Tomorrow we debrief properly, analyze what went wrong tonight, adjust our protocols. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Lena, for what it's worth, I'm glad you didn't quit. This organization needs you. I need you. After he left, Lena sat alone in the library until dawn, watching shadows shift across the garden as night gave way to morning. She thought about choices and consequences, about the woman she'd been 3 months ago and whoever she was becoming. Somewhere in the city, Sergei was planning his next move. Victor's body was probably already disposed of, the warehouse cleaned of evidence, official reports filed that would say nothing useful. The game continued, pieces moving across a board Lena was only beginning to understand. But she wasn't running anymore. Wasn't hiding. She'd chosen this world with open eyes, and she'd learned to navigate it or die trying. The sun rose over Manhattan, indifferent to the violence that had marked the night. Lena watched it climb, feeling something settle in her chest. Not quite peace, not quite acceptance, but determination, hard as iron, that she would survive whatever came next. She owed that much to Dmitri, to Victor, despite his betrayal. To every person who died in the shadows of this hidden world, while the city went about its bright, oblivious day. She owed it to herself. And as morning light filled the library, Lena Hayes stood and walked to the window, placing her palm against the glass that separated her from the garden, from the city, from everything she'd left behind. Behind her, the books held their secrets. Ahead, an uncertain future waited. But she was ready, finally, terrifyingly ready. Whatever came next, she would face it. Not because she was brave or special or destined for this, but because she'd made a choice, and she would honor it until the end. The federal agents arrived on a Tuesday morning exactly 6 weeks after the warehouse incident, their black sedans pulling up to the brownstone with the kind of deliberate precision that announced authority before badges ever came out. Lena watched them from the library window, coffee cooling in her hand, and felt her stomach drop. She'd known this was coming eventually. You didn't operate in Adrian's world without attracting official attention. The only question had been when, not if. Miss Hayes, Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, her usual composure slightly strained. There are federal agents here requesting to speak with you. Mr. Volkov is on his way back from the office. Tell them I'll be down in 5 minutes. Lena set down her coffee, moved to the desk where her laptop displayed the security analysis she'd been working on. She closed it carefully, encrypted the files with the protocols Dmitri had taught her, then took a slow breath to steady herself. Whatever they wanted, whatever they knew, she had to be smart about this. Adrian's freedom might depend on what she said or didn't say in the next few hours. The agents were waiting in the front sitting room, 2 of them, both professionally pleasant in the way that meant they were absolutely not pleasant at all. The woman was in her 40s, dark suit, sharp eyes that missed nothing. The man was younger, broader, with the build of someone who spent serious time in the gym. Miss Hayes? The woman stood, extending her hand. I'm Special Agent Victoria Chen, FBI. This is Special Agent Marcus Rivera. We'd like to ask you some questions about your employment with Adrian Volkov. The name, Marcus, sent a pang through Lena's chest, but she kept her expression neutral as she shook both their hands. Am I under arrest? No, nothing like that. Agent Chen's smile was practiced, meant to put people at ease. We're conducting an investigation into certain business practices and wanted to get your perspective as someone who's worked closely with Mr. Volkov's organization. Then I'm free to decline this conversation? Of course. Though we hope you won't. Agent Rivera spoke for the first time, his voice carrying a hint of New York accent. We're not looking to cause problems for you, Miss Hayes. We know you're not involved in the criminal aspects of Volkov's operation, but your cooperation could help us build a case against people who are. Lena sat, gesturing for them to do the same. I'd like to call my lawyer before we continue. Absolutely, you're right. Agent Chen pulled out a business card, set it on the table between them. Though I should mention, we're prepared to offer you immunity from prosecution in exchange for testimony. Complete immunity, Miss Hayes. Whatever you've witnessed, whatever you've been asked to do, none of it can be used against you if you cooperate with our investigation. The offer hung in the air between them, tempting and dangerous both. Lena looked at the card without touching it, her mind racing through implications. What exactly are you investigating? She asked carefully. Money laundering primarily, racketeering, import violations. We've been building this case for 2 years. Agent Chen leaned forward slightly. We know Adrian Volkov is trying to legitimize his father's criminal empire. We know he's been moving away from the violent, illegal operations that built that empire. We actually respect that effort, but we can't ignore the crimes that were committed along the way. So you want me to help you prosecute someone for crimes he's actively trying to move away from? Lena heard the edge in her own voice. That seems counterproductive. What seems counterproductive is allowing organized crime to launder itself clean without consequences. Agent Rivera's tone hardened slightly. People died building Volkov's empire. Families were destroyed. Communities were devastated. The fact that he's trying to go legitimate now doesn't erase that history. I didn't know Adrian during that time. I've only worked for him for 4 months. Whatever his father did, whatever happened before I arrived, I can't testify to any of that. But you can testify to current operations. Agent Chen pulled out a folder, opened it to reveal surveillance photos. Money moving through shell corporations, shipments that don't match customs declarations, meetings with known criminals. You've been in those meetings, Miss Hayes. You've seen the documents. Your testimony could help us prove pattern and practice. Lena looked at the photos without touching them. She recognized some of the locations, some of the faces. Legitimate business mixed with gray area operations, the transition Adrian was still navigating between what his father had built and what he was trying to create. I need to speak with my lawyer, she repeated firmly. The doorbell rang before Agent Chen could respond. Voices carried from the hallway, Adrian's smooth baritone, authoritative and calm, followed by someone else whose legal credentials practically radiated through their tone. Adrian entered the sitting room with a man in his 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, expensive suit proclaiming both success and sophistication. Agents, I'm afraid this conversation is over. My employee will not be answering questions without counsel present. Mr. Volkov. Agent Chen stood, unfazed. We were just explaining to Miss Hayes that we're prepared to offer immunity in exchange for cooperation. An offer she's declining. The lawyer, Arthur Brennan, Lena recognized him from firm documents she'd reviewed, moved to Lena's side with protective efficiency. Any further contact with my client will go through my office. Here's my card. I trust you know the way out. The agents left with professional courtesy that didn't quite hide their frustration. The moment the door closed behind them, Lena sagged against the chair, adrenaline draining away. They want me to testify against you, she said to Adrian. Full immunity in exchange for evidence about your operations. I know. We've been expecting this. Adrian sat across from her, his expression grave. The question is what you want to do about it. Lena stared at him. What I want? They're offering me a way out. Complete immunity. My life back. Freedom from all of this. Yes, they are. Adrian's voice remained steady. And if you want to take it, I won't stop you. I'll even help you. Arthur will negotiate the best possible terms. We'll arrange relocation if you need it. Make sure your mother's care continues uninterrupted. Whatever you need." "You're serious?" Lena searched his face for deception, for manipulation, found only sincerity. "You'd just let me walk away and testify against you?" "I'd rather you didn't testify at all. But if that's the price of your freedom, then yes." Adrian leaned back, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked tired. "I told you when this started, you always have a choice. That includes choosing to leave. I won't hold you hostage to decisions I made before we met." Arthur Brennan cleared his throat. "If I may, the immunity offer isn't quite as straightforward as the agents made it sound. There would be conditions, requirements, ongoing cooperation. It's not simply testify and walk away. You'd be bound to their case for months, possibly years." "But I'd be free," Lena said quietly. "No more looking over my shoulder. No more wondering if someone like Sergei is planning my death. No more warehouses and shooters and bodies under tarps. No more purpose either," Adrian said. "No more work that matters. No more feeling like what you do actually makes a difference. Just safety. If that's what you need, Lena, take it. I'll understand." The words cut deeper than he probably intended, because he was right. The past 4 months had been dangerous and terrifying and had nearly killed her more than once. But they'd also been meaningful in ways her entire previous life had never been. She'd mattered here. Her insights, her questions, her fresh perspective, all of it had contributed to something larger than herself. Going back to safety meant going back to invisibility, to being nobody, to drowning in a life that gave her nothing. "I need time," she said finally, "to think, to talk to my lawyer without you in the room, to figure out what I actually want instead of just reacting." "Of course." Adrian stood, extended his hand to help her up. His grip was warm and steady, familiar now in ways she hadn't expected 4 months ago. "Take all the time you need. Whatever you decide, we'll make it work." The next 3 days were a blur of meetings with Arthur, with other lawyers he brought in, with people who explained in excruciating detail exactly what immunity would and wouldn't protect her from. The picture that emerged was far less simple than Agent Chen had made it sound. Yes, she'd be protected from prosecution for anything she'd done while working for Adrian, but the immunity was conditional, dependent on her testimony being truthful, complete, and useful to their case. If she left anything out, if she was found to have lied, the immunity vanished and everything became prosecutable again. And they wanted everything: names, dates, transactions, conversations. They wanted her to wear a wire, gather evidence, actively participate in building their case. It wasn't a clean break. It was entanglement of a different kind, trading one form of obligation for another. The alternative, Arthur explained on the 3rd day, is to refuse cooperation entirely. Invoke your Fifth Amendment rights. Decline to testify. The FBI can't compel you to incriminate yourself or others. "But they could prosecute me for anything I've actually done," Lena said. "Potentially, yes. Though proving you knowingly participated in illegal activities would be difficult given your limited time with the organization and your lack of prior experience. You'd likely face obstruction charges at worst, possibly nothing at all if we're aggressive about your rights." Lena sat in Arthur's conference room, surrounded by legal documents and case files, and tried to figure out what version of herself she wanted to be. The scared woman who'd take any exit offered, or someone else, someone stronger. On the 4th day, Adrian called a meeting. The Brownstones' formal dining room had been converted into a war room, maps and photographs and organizational charts covering every surface. Dmitri was there, along with Katya and 3 others Lena had come to know over the months. They looked grim, expectant, waiting for Adrian to explain why they'd all been summoned. "The FBI made their move," Adrian said without preamble. "They've offered Lena immunity in exchange for testimony against our organization. It's a good offer, complete protection, a way out." He looked directly at her, and she's considering taking it. The room went silent. Lena felt the weight of everyone's attention, measuring her, judging her. Dmitri's face was carefully neutral. Katya looked betrayed. "I don't blame her," Adrian continued. "She didn't ask for any of this. She saved my life and got dragged into a world she never wanted to be part of. If she chooses safety over loyalty to people she's known for 4 months, that's entirely reasonable." "Is it, though?" Katya's voice was sharp, accented. We've trained her, protected her, trusted her with our lives, and now she's considering selling us out to the Federals? I'm considering staying alive, Lena said, finding her voice. I'm considering not spending the rest of my life waiting for the next Sergei, the next Victor, the next person who sees me as leverage or a problem to eliminate. You think witness protection will save you? Dmitri shook his head. You think the FBI can actually protect you from people like Sergei if you testify against this organization? You'll be a target forever, Lena. At least here, you have real protection. Here, I have a target on my back, Lena countered. There's a difference. Enough. Adrian's voice cut through the rising tension. This isn't a trial. I didn't call you here to gang up on Lena or pressure her decision. I called you here because regardless of what she chooses, we need to prepare for increased federal scrutiny. He moved to the organizational charts, began pointing out vulnerabilities. If Lena testifies, they'll use her testimony to get warrants. They'll freeze accounts, seize records, bring in everyone for questioning. Even if she refuses to cooperate, they're clearly escalating. We need to be ready either way. The meeting continued for hours, strategies and contingencies laid out with the same careful planning Adrian brought to everything. Lena listened, contributed when asked, and watched the people she'd come to know scramble to protect themselves from consequences her testimony might trigger. The guilt was crushing. When the others finally left, only Adrian and Lena remained in the war room, surrounded by evidence of an empire built on questionable foundations. You hate me right now, Lena said quietly. I don't hate you at all. Adrian was dismantling the charts, filing documents away. I'm disappointed, maybe. Not in you. In the situation. In the fact that doing the right thing might mean destroying what I've been trying to build. The right thing for who? For you. For the person you were before all this started. Adrian turned to face her. 4 months ago, you were a waitress trying to survive. You had no obligation to save me, no reason to care if I lived or died. But you acted anyway because that's who you are, someone who does the right thing even when it costs you. I won't ask you to stop being that person now just because it's inconvenient for me. Lena felt tears burning behind her eyes. I don't know what the right thing is anymore. Everything's so complicated. You're trying to go legitimate, but you're building on a foundation of crime. The FBI wants justice, but their version of justice might destroy good along with bad. And I'm just trying to figure out how to survive without losing myself completely. Then survive. Adrian closed the distance between them, his hands settling on her shoulders with gentle weight. Choose whatever path lets you sleep at night. Choose safety if that's what you need. I meant what I said. I won't hold you here against your will. But you want me to stay. It wasn't a question. Of course I want you to stay. You've become invaluable to this organization. More than that, you've become... He stopped, something flickering across his face. You matter, Lena. Not as an employee, as a person. Losing you would hurt in ways that have nothing to do with what you know about my business. The admission hung between them, weighted with meaning neither of them had acknowledged until now. Somewhere in the past 4 months, between training sessions and strategy meetings and late-night conversations in the library, something had shifted, changed, become something neither had planned for. Adrian, Lena whispered, not sure what she was asking for. He answered anyway, pulling her into an embrace that felt less like comfort and more like coming home. Lena pressed her face against his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong against her cheek. I'm scared, she admitted into the fabric of his shirt. I know, so am I. His arms tightened around her. Scared of losing you. Scared of what your testimony might do. Scared that I've dragged you into something you can never escape from, no matter what choice you make. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other while the city moved on beyond the brownstone's walls, indifferent to the small human drama playing out in its midst. Finally, Lena pulled back enough to look up at him. I need to visit my mother. Before I decide anything, I need to see her. I'll arrange it immediately. Take as long as you need. The facility where Adrian had moved her mother was north of the city, tucked into rolling hills that looked nothing like Detroit. The building was modern and bright, all windows and warm wood, completely different from the institutional coldness Lena remembered from the old place. Her mother was in the garden when Lena arrived, sitting in the sunshine with a blanket over her lap, watching birds at a feeder. She looked healthier than Lena had seen her in years, color in her cheeks, peace in her expression. "Mom?" Lena sat down beside her carefully. "It's me, Lena." Her mother turned, and for a moment there was nothing in her eyes. The blank confusion that came with advanced dementia, the disease that had stolen her piece by piece. Then, like clouds parting, something sparked. Recognition, maybe? Or just the comfort of a familiar voice. "Lena," she repeated, the name uncertain. "My Lena?" "Yeah, Mom, your Lena." She took her mother's hand, feeling the fragile bones beneath paper-thin skin. "I'm here." They sat together for an hour, Lena talking about nothing important while her mother drifted in and out of awareness. Sometimes she seemed to know who Lena was. Sometimes she thought Lena was a nurse or a visitor or someone from decades ago. It didn't matter. Lena just held her hand and soaked in the reminder of what she was protecting, what she was fighting for. "Marcus would be proud of you," her mother said suddenly, one of those startlingly lucid moments that occasionally broke through the fog. "You always were his brave girl." The words broke something in Lena's chest. She hadn't been brave. She'd been terrified every single day since that night at Luminaire. But maybe bravery wasn't the absence of fear. Maybe it was just moving forward despite it. "I love you, Mom," she whispered. "I know, baby. I know." The drive back to the city gave Lena time to think, to process, to finally understand what she wanted. Not what was safe, not what was smart, what was right for the person she was becoming rather than the person she used to be. Adrian was waiting in the library when she returned, and Lena could see the tension in his shoulders, the worry he was trying to hide behind composure. "I'm not testifying," she said without preamble. "I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment rights and refusing to cooperate with the FBI investigation." Adrian's expression shifted through relief, surprise, concern. "Lena, are you sure? This isn't a decision you can take back." "I'm sure." She moved to the window, looking out at the garden where she'd spent so many hours over the past months. "The FBI isn't wrong. Crimes were committed building your empire. People were hurt. But destroying what you're trying to build now won't undo that harm. It'll just create more casualties, more pain. They'll charge you with obstruction, possibly other things. Then Arthur will defend me, and if I have to do some time, I'll do it knowing I didn't betray people who've had my back when it mattered." Lena turned to face him. "I'm not naive, Adrian. I know you're not a saint. I know this organization still operates in gray areas. But I've also seen you trying to be better, trying to build something that doesn't require violence to sustain itself. That effort matters. It's worth protecting. Even if it costs you your freedom?" Even then. She crossed to him, reached up to touch his face with gentle fingers. "You asked me 4 months ago what I wanted. I didn't have an answer then. I do now. I want to be part of something that matters. I want to help you finish what you started, turning this empire into something legitimate, something sustainable. I want to prove that people can change, that history doesn't have to define destiny." Adrian caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. "You're remarkable. Do you know that?" "I'm just stubborn." Lena smiled despite the gravity of what she'd just committed to. "And apparently bad at self-preservation. The FBI won't give up easily. Then we'll fight them, together, however long it takes." She let him pull her close, rested her forehead against his. "I choose this. I choose you. Not because I have to, because I want to." The kiss that followed was inevitable, natural as breathing, like everything between them had been building toward this moment since that first night when she'd seen a red dot and refused to let death win. His lips were soft against hers, gentle, despite the intensity she could feel vibrating through his carefully controlled frame. When they finally broke apart, Adrian rested his forehead against hers, breathing unsteady. "I'm going to make this worth it. Everything you're risking, everything you're giving up, I'm going to prove it was worth choosing." "You already have," Lena whispered. The legal battle that followed was brutal and exhausting. The FBI, frustrated by Lena's refusal to cooperate, did exactly what Adrian predicted, charged her with obstruction, brought her in for questioning repeatedly, tried every angle to pressure her into changing her mind. Arthur Brennan was relentless in her defense, fighting every charge, challenging every warrant, making the prosecutors work for every inch of ground. The case dragged on for months, media attention bringing scrutiny neither Lena nor Adrian wanted. But something unexpected happened during that time. The publicity forced Adrian's organization to accelerate its legitimization efforts. Under intense federal scrutiny, gray area operations were shut down, questionable partnerships dissolved, the entire business restructured towards sustainability rather than profit at any cost. It was painful. Some longtime associates walked away, unable or unwilling to adapt. Others were quietly pushed out when they resisted the changes. The empire Adrian's father had built was dismantled piece by piece, replaced with something cleaner, if smaller. And through it all, Lena was there, analyzing, advising, pushing for transparency, even when it was uncomfortable. She became the organization's conscience in ways Adrian hadn't expected but desperately needed. 14 months after that first night at Luminaire, the FBI finally dropped all charges against Lena. There wasn't enough evidence to prove she'd knowingly participated in illegal activities, and Arthur had shredded their obstruction case with aggressive defense tactics. She walked out of this courthouse to find Adrian waiting, the relief on his face making him look younger, less burdened. "It's over," he said simply. "No." Lena took his hand, squeezed it. "It's just beginning." She was right. With the federal investigation concluded and no charges filed, Adrian accelerated the final transitions. Within 6 months, the entire organization had been restructured. The legitimate security firm Lena had proposed became reality, offering executive protection and risk assessment to corporations and high-net-worth individuals. The import-export business was streamlined, completely above board, profitable through efficiency rather than questionable practices. Some of the old guard remained, adapting to the new reality. Dmitry became head of operations, his tactical mind valuable in legitimate security work. Katya shifted to training, teaching protective techniques to corporate clients. Others found their place in the evolving structure. And Lena became exactly what Adrian had seen potential for that first night. Chief Risk Analyst, the title read on business cards, but the reality was more complex. She was strategist, conscience, bridge between the world Adrian had come from and the world he was building. 2 years after that stormy night in Manhattan, Lena stood in the offices of Volkov Security Solutions, watching through floor-to-ceiling windows as the city stretched out below. The company occupied 3 floors of a midtown building, all glass and steel and legitimate success. Employees moved through clean, bright spaces, doing work they could be proud of, building careers that didn't require looking over their shoulders. "Impressive, isn't it?" Adrian's voice came from behind her, and she felt his hand settle on her shoulders. 2 years ago, this was just an idea. Now it's real." "We built this," Lena said, leaning back against him. "Together. Out of something ugly, we made something beautiful." "You made it beautiful. I was just following your vision." She turned in his arms, looked up at the man who'd offered her purpose when she had nothing, who'd trusted her perspective when he had no reason to, who'd loved her long before either of them admitted it. "Do you ever regret it? Walking away from the power your father built, the empire that could have been yours?" "Every day," Adrian admitted, "and then I look at what we've created instead and realize I don't miss it at all. This is better, harder, less immediately profitable, infinitely more complicated, but better. Because it's honest. Because it's ours." He kissed her forehead, "Built on choices we made together instead of history we inherited. That matters more than I knew it could." Lena's phone buzzed. A message from the care facility where her mother lived, the same upstate place Adrian had moved her to years ago. Her mother's health was declining, the end approaching with the inexorable certainty of her disease. But she was comfortable, cared for, surrounded by peace instead of institutional coldness. "I need to visit Mom this weekend," Lena said. "I'll drive you. We can stay over, make a weekend of it." The casual assumption that they'd do it together, that her family was his concern too, still made Lena's chest warm. They'd never formalized what they were to each other. No proposal, no public declaration. But everyone knew. The way they moved through the world together, the decisions they made as a unit, the future they were building side by side. That evening, sitting in the brownstone library that had become their retreat, Adrian pulled out a small box. Lena's heart stopped. "I've been carrying this for 3 months, he said, opening it to reveal a ring. Simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the lamplight. waiting for the right moment. And then I realized there's no such thing as the right moment. There's just now. This moment, you and me, and the choice to keep choosing each other. Adrian, I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. The symbolism feels wrong, like I'm trying to own you or bind you to me in ways you haven't chosen freely. He took the ring from the box, held it up so it caught the light. This is a promise instead. A promise that whatever comes next, we face it together. That I'll keep being honest even when it's hard. That I'll keep trying to be worthy of the trust you've placed in me. That I'll love you until the day I die, and probably beyond. Lena took the ring with shaking fingers, slipped it onto her right hand where it fit perfectly. I promise too, to keep questioning you, to keep pushing you to be better, to keep building this life we've made together until it becomes everything we dreamed it could be. They kissed in the golden lamplight, surrounded by books and memories and the quiet certainty of choices made and honored. Outside, Manhattan glittered in the darkness, full of danger and possibility both, indifferent to the small human dramas that gave individual lives meaning. But inside the brownstone, warmth and safety reigned. Two people who'd found each other through violence and chaos, who'd chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage, who'd learned that love wasn't about perfection, but about refusing to give up on each other. Months turned into years. The security firm grew, expanded, became known for excellence and integrity. Lena's mother passed peacefully one spring morning, and Adrian held her through the grief, gave her space to mourn, reminded her that love persisted even after death. Eventually, when the time felt right, Adrian asked properly. On the anniversary of that first night at Luminaire, he took her back to the garden at the brownstone. The same garden she'd stared at from her guest room window years ago, frightened and uncertain. Flowers bloomed around them, spring bringing renewal and growth. "Marry me," he said simply, no grand gesture needed. "Make this official. Choose me forever instead of just one day at a time." "Yes," Lena answered, equally simple. "Yes to forever. Yes to building our life together. Yes to everything we've become and everything we're still becoming." The wedding was small, intimate, just the people who mattered. Dmitri walked Lena down the aisle since her father was long gone and Marcus couldn't be there. Katya cried, surprising everyone, including herself. Arthur Brennan officiated, his legal precision bringing unexpected poetry to the ceremony. And when Adrian slipped the ring onto Lena's left hand, when she did the same for him, when they kissed as husband and wife, it felt less like an ending and more like a beginning. The start of the next chapter in a story that had begun with danger and chaos but had evolved into something neither could have imagined. Standing at the altar, hands clasped, Lena thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago. Drowning in a life that gave her nothing, invisible to everyone who mattered, struggling just to survive. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who'd faced danger and refused to break, someone who'd chosen purpose over safety and built something meaningful from that choice. She thought about the red dot that had changed everything, about split-second decisions that rewrote destinies, about how violence and chaos could sometimes create opportunities for transformation if you were brave enough to seize them. "What are you thinking about?" Adrian whispered as they swayed through their first dance, surrounded by people they loved in the ballroom of a hotel that represented everything they'd built together. "About how none of this should have worked," Lena answered honestly. "About how statistically, tragically, we should have failed, and about how grateful I am that we didn't." "We didn't fail because you wouldn't let us." Adrian pulled her closer. "You kept believing we could be better than our circumstances. That belief became reality because you refused to accept any other outcome." "We became reality," Lena corrected. "Not just me, us. Together." They danced until the music faded, until the night gave way to dawn, until the future stretched before them bright and uncertain and full of possibility. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Building something good from questionable foundations never was. But they'd walked difficult roads before and survived. They'd do it again, together for as long as they both lived. And when the sun rose over Manhattan on the first day of their married life, Lena Hayes Volkov stood at the window of their hotel suite and looked out at the city that had witnessed her transformation. The red dot was long gone. The danger that had defined her early days in Adrian's world had faded into manageable risk, controlled and planned for rather than chaotic. What remained was choice. The choice to keep building. The choice to keep loving. The choice to keep becoming better versions of themselves, day by day, decision by decision. Adrian joined her at the window, wrapped his arms around her from behind, rested his chin on her shoulder. Ready for the rest of our lives? Lena leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence, the steady rhythm of his breathing. I've been ready since the moment I saw that red dot and decided to move instead of freeze. Everything after that was just following through on that first choice. Best choice you ever made. Second best, she corrected with a smile. The best choice was saying yes when you offered me purpose instead of pity. Everything else followed from that. They stood together as morning light filled the city, two people who'd found each other through impossible circumstances and refused to let those circumstances define them. The empire they'd built wasn't the one Adrian's father had envisioned. It was smaller, cleaner, more sustainable, but it was theirs, built on honesty and hard work, and the belief that people could change if they wanted to badly enough. The story that had begun with a bullet and a red dot had become something neither could have predicted. Not a fairy tale. Their lives were too complicated, too rooted in harsh reality for fairy tale simplicity. But something real, something earned, something that would last because they chose every single day to make it last. And as they turned away from the window, turned toward their future together, Lena felt the weight of her past finally lift. The drowning waitress was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd faced death and chaos and impossible choices, who'd survived and thrived and built something beautiful from the wreckage. She was Lena Hayes Volkov, risk analyst, strategist, conscience of an organization transformed, wife to a man who'd given her purpose, builder of a life that mattered. And she was, finally and completely, home. The red dot that had started everything was just a memory now. But the choice it had sparked, the choice to act instead of freeze, to save instead of run, to build instead of destroy, that choice echoed forward through every day of the life she and Adrian continued building together. One moment had changed everything. One decision had rewritten two destinies. And standing in the morning light with Adrian's hand in hers, Lena knew with absolute certainty that she'd make that same choice again, every single time, for the rest of her life. Because some moments are worth the risk, some people are worth the danger, and some loves are worth choosing, over and over, until the very end. This was hers, and it was perfect.